Chapter 1923. Hearing this, Lin Sun looked indifferent. The old woman was not a bad person. She just strictly abided by her duty to look after the young man in linen. Lin Sun could understand that. Even if he was warned, he had no grievances. But what made Lin Sun a little unhappy was that she had to take the blame for him. He had never made such a request. What was more, what was too much? Lin Sun had no intention of dragging the young man into the water to shelter him from the wind and rain, even though he was in imminent danger. However, Lin Sun didn't bother to explain. With the status and realm of the old woman, it was impossible for her to believe these explanations. In the final analysis, Lin Sun was not important enough in her eyes. The night wind was blowing. On the guest mountain, Lin Sun waited silently. In the courtyard, Lu Qinyan sat alone. She took out the ancient rhythm ocarina, put it to her red and moist lips, and gently played a vast, vigorous and distant note. Things had come to this. Her heart was completely calm, and she didn't care about life and death. This place was quiet, without any disturbances. But the guest mountain had been stared at by many people. The scene where Jin Tianqi and others were beaten and Wu Yunlian was killed had already shocked many people. I didn't expect that there was such a ruthless person living there. He killed the people of Tian'an Pavilion and suppressed a group of Jin Tian clansmen. No one can match his courage. But because of this, I'm afraid he won't survive tonight. Didn't you see that? He clearly knows that a disaster is coming and is waiting to die. All kinds of comments were heard in the dark. Uncle, let's go and have a look. At the foot of the mountain, Wu Ming, a young monk in a bamboo hat and linen robe, walked out of the courtyard with a group of descendants of the Hidden Land realm. Go. This boy is very likely to be the heretic. If so, we must not let him be killed by others. Sitting cross-legged in front of the courtyard, Monk Dukong said in a hoarse voice. Wu Ming nodded. The group of people went up the mountain under the cover of the night. For a moment they attracted a lot of attention. Why did these monks from the Jade Zen Temple take the lead? Something is wrong. No matter what the discussion was, Wu Ming and his companions seemed to be unaware of it. They looked calm and deep. Hee, to think that I didn't beat you all to death. Halfway up the mountain, the cloth-robed elder revealed an undisguised sneer. Jin Tianqi and the others knelt on the ground while their expressions changed indeterminately, and they were extremely embarrassed and furious in their hearts. Ancestor, we're useless. Jin Tianqi kowtowed and gritted his teeth. But that fellow knew that we were from the Jintian clan, yet he didn't show any courtesy. He clearly didn't put us in his eyes. The cloth-robed elder sneered, You want to incite me to avenge you? Jin Tianqi's expression froze, but he braced himself and said, Ancestor, it doesn't matter if we lose face, but the Jintian clan's face cannot be lost. Bang! Jin Tianqi's body trembled as the tendons and bones in his body suddenly broke apart, and his entire body fell limply to the ground while his entire body twitched without end from the intense pain. The others were astounded and felt even more terrified. The cloth-robed old man said coldly, If it wasn't for all of you being too useless and useless, how could such a thing have happened? Don't you think it's too late for you to realize that you can't lose face for the clan now? Ancestor, they may be a little stupid, but they are right. The Jintian clan's face will be regained wherever it was lost. All of a sudden, a cold voice sounded. Behind the cloth-robed elder, the closed door of the courtyard opened, and out walked an extremely tall and beautiful woman. She was graceful, and had a flawless physique. Jin Tian Xianyu, the most dazzling genius among the younger generation of the monarch clan, the Jintian clan. She had cultivated for 180 years and was ranked 49th on the Heaven's Saint King board. She was famous throughout the entire galaxy ancient path, admired by countless cultivators. Jin Tianqi and the others had a complicated expression on their faces as they watched her walk out. They were both jealous and respectful of Jin Tian Xianyu. The cloth-robed elder's expression softened and he said, Xian Yu, you've broken through? Jin Tian Xian Yu nodded. Even in front of the cloth-robed elder, she maintained her cold demeanor, reporting to the ancestor, I have entered the Peak Saint King realm and formed a complete Dao domain. The cloth-robed elder's eyes lit up and he praised, Good! Ancestor, I'm going to see Yu Xian. Jin Tian Xian Yu said in a cold voice, I'll take this opportunity to test my strength after breaking through, but I'll see if he's qualified to be my whetstone. The cloth-robed elder smiled, Go ahead. His attitude towards Jin Tian Xianwei, Jin Tianqi, and the others was completely different, and it was like the difference between heaven and earth. This made Jin Tianqi and the others even more jealous. But at the same time, they were relieved. With Jin Tian Xian Yu's help, Yu Xian Yu would definitely die. At least, he could save some face for them. Jin Tian Xian Yu nodded, and then she floated away. When Jin Tian Xian Yu appeared, everyone was shocked at this moment. The fairy of the Jin Tian clan finally appeared. Countless people were excited, as if they were witnessing a legend walking in the world. It was too rare and too rare. Obviously, she was going to save face for the Jin Tian clan, the monarch clan. On the guest mountain, all eyes were focused on the same place, the place where Lin Sun stood. The undercurrent was surging, and the killing intent was spreading. But to everyone's surprise, someone arrived before Wu Ming and Jin Tian Xian Yu. Swish! The void rippled, and a thin figure appeared out of thin air. His hair was as white as snow, and he looked like a teenager. It was Liang Chuan, the supreme elder of Heavenly Sound Parlor. He was a quasi-emperor. Many cultivators who saw this scene held their breath. Yu Xian was going to suffer. Heavenly Sound Parlor, the Monarch Clan, Jin Tian Clan, Jade Zen Temple, the three forces gathered together and attacked in the night. Who could stop them? This kind of power was enough to make people despair. Liang Chuan's expression was gloomy. He looked at Lin Sun, who was standing in front of the courtyard, and said, Yu Jun, Wu Yinlian, and the others were all killed by you? Lin Sun nodded indifferently. Liang Chuan's eyes were cold and he said, You also injured the Jin Tian clan? Lin Sun nodded again, his expression calm. There was nothing to hide. Liang Chuan took a deep breath, and his face was livid. If I'm not wrong, the death of the untainted land Taoist court is also related to you, right? Lin Sun nodded again, and said, Heavenly Sound Parlor can't protect its disciples, so I have to do it for you. His words were filled with sarcasm. When they heard this, the experts who were secretly watching all this were in an uproar. A few days ago, the death of the untainted land Taoist court experts caused a huge commotion on the rocking ship. When everyone suspected that the young man in linen clothes and the old woman were the culprits, who would have thought that the real culprit was someone else? Yu Xian. This expert of the monarch clan, Yu clan, who had always been ignored, had given them too much shock and surprise tonight. Liang Chuan was so angry that his eyes were about to spit fire. These days, the death of the untainted land Taoist court experts had affected the Heavenly Sound Parlor, and everyone was anxious. Now, the Jin Tian clan experts were seriously injured, and it was foreseeable that the Heavenly Sound Parlor would be attacked again. All of this was done by the same person. What Liang Chuan could not tolerate the most was that Yu Xian had killed Yu Jun, Wu Yunlian, and the other experts of the Heavenly Sound Parlor. Die, you evil creature! Liang Chuan roared. But just as he was about to make a move, a cold, tall and beautiful figure appeared out of thin air and said, Let the Jin Tian clan kill this person. Liang Chuan, who was in a rage, was startled by this sentence. Then he came to his senses and looked uncertain. In the end, he suppressed the boiling killing intent in his heart and said, The Heavenly Sound Parlor did not do a good job and disturbed Miss Xianyue. Jin Tian Xuanyue's voice was cold. Don't blame the Heavenly Sound Parlor. Blame a group of trash for ruining the reputation of the Jin Tian clan. This shame should be washed away by me. Her voice floated in the night sky, like a sword piercing to the bone. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and glanced at the woman. Then he looked away and saw Wu Ming and the others in the distance. "What about you? Do you want to fight too?" Lin Sun asked. Wu Ming put his palms together and said calmly, "If you come with us, you may be spared from death today." Jin Tian Xianyue said coldly, "The Hidden Land Realm wants to fight with me?" The Hidden Land Realm. All the cultivators who were paying attention to this scene were shocked and their faces changed. Only then did they know that this group of monks who claimed to be from the Jade Zen Temple were actually from the Hidden Land Realm, one of the three dark giants. At the same time, the old man in a robe who was halfway up the mountain frowned. Monk Dukong, who was sitting cross-legged at the foot of the mountain, opened his eyes. But in the end, neither of the two emperors took any action. Wu Ming ignored Jin Tian Xianyue and just stared at Lin Sun. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and suddenly laughed. "The old guy beside you didn't take action, but asked you to come together. In this case, I will play with you." As he said this, his aura suddenly changed. The cyan light was flowing, and the ancient cyan sky was pressing down on Zhou Su. His clothes were fluttering, and his black eyes were like lightning. He glanced at Jin Tian Xianyue and Wu Ming. "Don't waste any more time. Come at me together." How arrogant he was! The overmatches who were watching this scene were all surprised. Was this guy really not afraid of death, or did he not know the immensity of heaven and earth? Jin Tian Xianyue couldn't help frowning. For the first time in her life, she was looked down upon like this. Boom! Wu Ming was even more direct. He suddenly punched out, like a Buddha reaching out his hand to suppress the world. In an instant, the sound of Sanskrit was like thunder, and the power of the palm covered the sky. The horrible black Buddha light crushed the void and kept roaring. The supreme inheritance of the Hidden Land Realm, Buddhist land in the palm. It looked like a palm, but in fact it was full of the realm of Tao. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and he also pressed out his palm. Boom! This palm print was like a furnace, like an abyss, but not an abyss. It floated and sank, and 9 cauldrons surrounded it, suppressing the universe and engulfing everything. Chapter 1924. The power of the Tao domain that sacred monarch extinction controlled was naturally unimaginably terrifying. Wu Ming was one of the 9 Buddhist masters of the Hidden Land Realm. He cultivated the inheritance of the Buddhist kingdom, so his foundation and combat power were not to be underestimated. The power of his palm was so great that even Liang Chuan, the quasi-emperor, was surprised, and the strong people who were watching the battle in secret were also shocked. But this palm was silently offset by Lin Sun. As Lin Sun's palm power burst out, boom! Wu Ming's whole body shook violently, his clothes fluttered, and the bamboo hat on his head suddenly exploded, debris flying. Up! At the foot of the mountain, the old monk spat out a word. The entire guest-welcoming mountain was suddenly covered with a layer of invisible defensive power. The old man in a robe quietly withdrew his right hand from his sleeve. He had planned to do the same before. Otherwise, just the eruption of this battle alone would definitely cause this guest-welcoming mountain to explode. So strong! This guy hid his strength well. No wonder he could kill those strong people of the primitive Taoist court, and even suppress those strong people of the Jintian clan with one hand. There was a burst of surprised voices in different places of the reception mountain. Taoism peer, are you really not going to come with us? Wu Ming's eyes were like the sea, surging with obscure Sanskrit symbols. As he spoke, he stepped forward, and black lotuses emerged under his feet. Behind him, the light and shadow of the Buddha chanting sutras and suppressing the dark hell appeared, making him look terrifying. Boom! He suddenly raised his hand and used the law phenomenon. His 5 fingers condensed into a treasure bottle seal, which swept across the sky. Isn't it better for you to stay? Lin Sun said indifferently. With a flick of his finger, a big cauldron emerged, intertwined with Taoist markings and flowing laws, showing an unshakable momentum to suppress all directions. The treasure bottle seal and the big cauldron collided fiercely in the void. Terrible light and divine light spread, and the sound rumbled like thunder. The treasure bottle seal suddenly collapsed, and the big cauldron took the opportunity to suppress Wu Ming. Wu Ming's pupils shrank, he took a deep breath, and his body was covered with black Buddha light. Vaguely, he seemed to have turned into 3 heads and 6 arms, waving violently. Bang bang bang! Palm prints rained down on the cauldron. Every strike had the power to collapse mountains and rivers. In the end, the cauldron exploded. But Lin Sun had already taken advantage of the situation to attack. Like a king who dominated the country, he was unstoppable in the void with the power of the 9 cauldrons. Rumble! The sky was dark and the void was in disorder. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had clashed over 100 times. The battle was dangerous and hair-raising. However, Wu Ming was completely suppressed. Lin Sun's attacks were just too ferocious and powerful. Every single move he made possessed the power to stabilize the world. Every single strike could easily kill a saint ruler. No matter how Wu Ming tried to resist or resolve the situation, he was unable to reverse the situation. It was not that he was not strong enough. On the contrary, as one of the 9 Zen lords of the Hidden Land realm, his foundation, cultivation, and the power of the Great Path that he had mastered were all top-notch among his peers. He was an overlord. If he had not been born in the Dark World, he would have easily ranked in the top 100 of the All-Heaven King Sage Board. It was just that this time he met Lin Sun, a peerless, ruthless man who had crossed the forbidden trial and cultivated the only Tao in all heavens. When it came to the attainments of peak Saint King realm, there were few who could compare with Lin Sun among the powerhouses of the same realm since ancient times. Even without using his original body, Lin Sun was fearless with the talent of Greenwood Taoism body. Wu Ming, no. Witnessing this scene, many people's expressions changed, and they were shocked. At this time, how could they not see that the descendant of the Hidden Land realm was slightly inferior to Wu Ming in a head-on confrontation? The youth in linen wanted to rush out several times, but he was stopped by the old woman. He felt helpless and emotional. This guy had hidden his strength too well. Young lord, you will understand in the future that there is no shortage of such people in the Hong Meng world. The old woman's voice was calm. In fact, she also felt a trace of pity in her heart. It was true that there was no shortage of geniuses in the Hong Meng world, but geniuses like Lin Sun were rare. It was a pity that after today, such a genius would probably disappear from the world. Puff! In the field, Wu Ming couldn't help coughing up blood in the end. His face was pale, and his eyes were completely dignified. He was now 100% sure that Lin Sun must be the heretic. Even if Lin Sun's breath had been covered, the strength and means he showed were surprisingly similar to that of the heretic. He can't do it. Do you want to fight with me? Lin Sun's black hair fluttered, and his whole body was covered with cyan light as clear as glass. His figure was brilliant and proud. I can do it alone, Jintian Xianhua said coldly. Her figure flashed and suddenly came to the battlefield like a dream. She put her fingers together like a sword and cut the void with a swoosh. It was as sharp as lightning, as powerful as the wind, and as unrestrained as the wind. Fuyao's scripture of sword. The youth in linen who had been watching the battle in the courtyard blurted out. This sword was the supreme inheritance of the Jintian family, a supreme sword scripture created by the White Emperor in ancient times. Lin Sun's figure flashed. Although he managed to avoid the sword, a strand of hair fell by his ear. If he had missed it by just a little bit, his neck would have been cut open. However, Lin Sun's face was calm. Wu Ming's eyes flickered, but he finally held back and didn't continue to fight. But he didn't withdraw from the battle either. He wouldn't allow Lin Sun to be killed by others. Chaotic Ocean. As soon as Jintian Xianhua made her move, she showed a fierce and swift posture. Her sword qi was dense, stirring up the wind and clouds. Every single sword strike was like a flowing light that flashed by, and it was chaotic like the wind. It carried the might to rise into the 9 heavens and reverse the might of the 5 elements. For a moment, the world was filled with sword shadows, sword light, and sword light. What a terrible sword power! Many practitioners who were watching the battle in the dark felt their eyes stinging, and their hearts trembled. At this moment, Jin Tian Xianyue was like a female sword fairy, graceful and charming, and her sword intent was shocking. Is this the power of the 49th disciple of the Holy King Gang? Even Wu Ming had to admit that this woman's attainments in swordsmanship were profound, and her cultivation was even stronger than his. But what made people feel strange was that, no matter how fierce Jin Tian Xuanyue's attack was, no matter how mighty the sword qi swept across the universe, Lin Sun could always suppress it with the power of the 9 cauldrons. It gave people a feeling that once the 9 cauldrons appeared, the world would be stable and unshakable. How is this possible? He's too strong. When did the Yu family, an imperial family, have such a fierce man? Countless people were in an uproar. In this battle, Jin Tian Xianyue showed her amazing demeanor as soon as she made her move. She deserved her reputation. But the power Lin Sun showed was even more surprising. No one had expected that an overmatch from the Yu family, an imperial family, would hide so deeply. No one knew that Lin Sun hadn't used the endless devouring scripture and the mysteries of the Great Way Furnace scripture. Otherwise, his power would be even stronger. Clang! In the battlefield, Jin Tian Xianyue took out a Taoist sword, which glowed with snow-white brilliance like a Milky Way pouring down from the sky. The name of the sword was White Condensation, inherited from the primitive times. She looked calm, her clothes fluttering, and she held the sword to kill. Those who knew her well knew that at this moment, she had used all her strength. Clatter, the White Condensation Taoist sword swept out and suddenly turned into a sword domain. This sword domain was extremely magnificent. It turned into a giant city in the sea of clouds. The city tower was like a sword to the sky, surging with boundless white light. Vaguely, there seemed to be an illusory figure sitting on the city tower, blooming with supreme majesty. Halfway up the mountain, the eyes of the old man in the Taoist robe burst out a ball of divine light, revealing a look of joy. The sword plays White Emperor City, and the spirit reaches the ages. Her White Emperor City has finally been condensed. Yes, Jin Tian Xuanyue's sword domain was called White Emperor City. In order to condense this sword domain, she once sat alone in the clouds and quietly observed White Emperor City for 30 years. She absorbed the charm of White Emperor City and integrated it into her own swordsmanship. It should be known that White Emperor City was originally created by the White Emperor himself. Every inch of this city was branded with the traces of the Great Way left by the White Emperor. Jin Tian Xianyue seemed to be comprehending a city, but it could be said that she was comprehending the road of the Great Way left by the White Emperor. And today, she had condensed her own Tao domain. This was also the first time that she showed White Emperor City to the world. In an instant, a spectacle appeared in everyone's field of vision on the guest mountain. A magnificent and vast snow-white ancient city stood in the clouds, bathed in the brilliance of stars, as if it was immortal. A majestic figure sat in it, overlooking the heavens. That scene caused countless people to be shocked, and they didn't dare believe that this was a phenomenon that a Tao domain could possess. Suppress. Under the shocked gaze of the crowd, Jin Tian Xianyue moved her mind, and the White Emperor City in the clouds fell down. It was impossible to describe the horror of this blow. It was like a divine city descending from the sky, oppressing the world. The vast expanse of whiteness was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes and their souls were suppressed. Lin Sun's eyes were full of surprise. Before, he wanted to go to the Golden Sky world with Lu Qinyan to see the glory of White Emperor City, but he didn't expect that he would see White Emperor City in this way today. In an instant, His figure was covered and appeared in White Emperor City. Row upon row of buildings, the streets were clean and spacious and orderly. Outside the sky was the vast starry sky, and in the distance was the boundless sea of clouds. Above the city tower, a sword seal was hung, on which was written the ancient character, White Emperor. Standing in the city and looking around, the mist and clouds were misty, and the buildings were ancient. It was like being in the legendary fairy city, majestic and magnificent, which didn't seem to belong to this world. Die here, and it won't damage your reputation. Jean Tian Xuanyue's cold voice sounded in the city, ethereal and traceless. Buzz. On the towering city tower, a sword seal of the White Emperor glowed. Suddenly, an imposing figure that seemed to be out of thin air appeared. He stood there with a terrifying aura. It was as if the first city lord of this city, Emperor Bai, was looking down on the world. Almost at the same time, the whole White Emperor city suddenly shone, and countless bright sword chi swarmed out from the streets, buildings, sea of clouds, and starry sky. Fierce, wanton, bright, violent. The whole city was covered with sword rain. Chapter 1925. The sword chi was like wind, rain, waterfall, and torrent. The White Emperor city was filled with sword chi. Even Lin Sun had to admit that the Tao field of Jintian Xianyue was amazing, magnificent, and extraordinary. If it were an ordinary pier, he would not be able to resist it at all and would end up being pierced by thousands of swords and die suddenly. However, Lin Sun seemed to turn a blind eye to all this. He walked along the clean and spacious street towards the top of the city wall. His manner was leisurely. From all directions, the dense sword chi cut through the void with ear-piercing screeches. It was as dense as a tide and as turbulent as the sea, covering the sky and the earth. However, before it could touch Lin Sun, it melted inch by inch at a distance of 30 meters. At this moment, the myriad of sword chi melted and vanished silently like snow, causing Lin Sun to seem to be invulnerable to all kinds of attacks. He walked forward like this, and the sword rain was like a curtain, piling up layer by layer, as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. But no matter how they attacked, they could not shake Lin Sun within 30 meters. Almost in the blink of an eye, Lin Sun was close to the towering city tower. He raised his head and looked over. A mighty figure sat atop the city tower, and his entire body was covered in vast sword insight. He was like a god of the sword Tao of legend. Was this primordial White Emperor? A legendary figure who established the supreme emperor realm with the sword? Immediately, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze, feeling a little regretful. This phantom was merely an aura that could intimidate a cultivator's state of mind, but it did not possess the true might of an emperor. In short, it was just a phantom, with nothing more than the momentum of a great emperor. But even so, to be able to integrate the momentum of a great emperor into one's own Tao field, this was a wonderful means. Jintian Xianyue was moved for the first time. Her beautiful eyes shrank and her mind was rippling. She found it impossible to imagine that there was someone in this world who could stroll leisurely in her White Emperor city. Did this mean that the other party's control of the power of the Tao field was far above her? How was this possible? Jintian Xianyue had always been extremely conceited and had absolute confidence in her own strength. She had never encountered such a setback since she was a child. For a moment, her mind was in turmoil. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to approach the towering city tower, Jintian Xianyue took a deep breath and used his most powerful trump card. My Tao is like a city, indestructible. My city is like a world, my sword divides life and death. Clang! The White Emperor's sword seal that was hanging on the towering city gate tower suddenly transformed into a sword. It was 2 feet and 3 inches long, 4 fingers wide, and pure white. Rumble! Countless torrents of swords converged over from all directions, and they fused into the sword, causing the sword to seem like a sun that glowed even more dazzling while its might grew even more oppressive. The entire White Emperor city was shrouded by the terrifying sword intent it emitted. Lin soon stopped and finally showed a trace of solemnity. This sword also made him feel a kind of pressure that hit him in the face. Kill! On the city gate tower, the sword seemed to have sucked out all the strength of White Emperor City. With a slow but omnipresent might, it slowly chopped down. This sword stretched across the universe and covered all of White Emperor City. There was no way to dodge. This sword is worthy of a full blow from me. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and the embryonic form of a Tao domain emerged in the space of 30 meters. It was like a furnace, like an abyss, but not an abyss. It was obscure, profound, and indescribable. Boom! At this moment, Lin Sun's figure seemed to turn into a black hole. The nearby buildings, streets, the ground under his feet, and the starry sky above his head all cracked and burst as if they were pulled by a terrifying force. When the sword slashed down, the entire White Emperor City was turned into a deep abyss. How terrifying and dazzling was this sword! But at this time, it fell silently into the abyss and was swallowed up and disappeared. White Emperor City burst into pieces at this moment. On the welcoming mountain, the divine light burst out, and the thunderous roar was turbulent and chaotic. Jintian Xianyue, who was graceful and beautiful, looked pale. A wisp of bright red blood dripped from her lips, and her body trembled slightly. Her beautiful eyes were full of disbelief, and she stood there in a daze. The White Emperor City, that she had condensed after 30 years of meditation, was broken like this. The whole place was silent. All the people on and off the welcoming mountain were shocked. Jintian Xianyue, an extraordinary fairy-like existence, and her White Emperor City, was so wonderful, but she failed to trap and kill Yu Xian. This was too unexpected. The old woman was a little absent-minded, which was rare for her. She thought to herself, "This man can't be a nobody, but I don't know which orthodoxy he comes from." The young man in linen opened his mouth wide, and then he gasped. He was also shocked and amazed. At the foot of the mountain, Monk Dukong's eyes were surging with divine light. This heretic was completely different from when he was in Kunlun ruins. On the mountainside, the old man in linen robe was silent and frowning. Jintian Xianyue, the pride of the younger generation of Jintian clan, was favored by him. He thought that she could easily suppress her opponent after she broke through and condensed White Emperor City. Who would have thought that it would be such a result? In front of the courtyard, Lin Sun stood in the void, spotless and aloof. His whole body was flowing with misty cyan Taoist light. Different from before, when they looked at him again, everyone's eyes and thoughts were completely different. Did such a peerless figure really come from the Yu clan, an imperial family? "Why don't you fight me together?" Lin Sun's voice broke the silence in the field. He looked at Jintian Xianyue and Wu Ming without sadness or joy. Wu Ming was full of fighting intent. Jintian Xianyue took a deep breath and said with a cold expression, "A loss is a loss. I won't go so far as to join hands with others just to win." She had her pride. Lin Sun smiled and didn't insist. In fact, there was no need to fight this battle at all. Those old monsters were doomed to not watch him kill Wu Ming or Jintian Xianyue. As if to prove Lin Sun's inference true, in the next moment, a warm voice resounded. "Xianyu, you did very well. A true powerhouse isn't invincible, but whether or not they can stand up again after defeat." With the voice, the figure of the old man in linen robe appeared out of thin air. "Greetings, old ancestor." Jintian Xuanyue's eyes were complicated. She knew that when the old ancestor appeared, all this would come to an end. And the man who destroyed her White Emperor City, he was destined to pay the price. As Jin Tianqi said, the Jintian clan couldn't be disgraced. The whole field was silent. Countless strong people who were paying attention to all this felt suffocated at this moment. All their senses were cut off, and they couldn't see what was happening in the field anymore. But they knew that Sword Emperor Fufeng was about to take action. I'm afraid I won't see Yu Xian again after tonight. Many people sighed in their hearts and felt pity for Lin Sun. It was undoubtedly a pity that a peerless figure who could defeat Jintian Xianyue would die here before he could climb the road to the Emperor realm. The young man in linen robe felt nervous, and couldn't help looking at the old woman beside him. The old woman also sighed in her heart, but she still shook her head. They were just passers-by in this storm and couldn't get involved. Perhaps, after this incident, I'll be able to let the young lord know that no matter how dazzling a monstrous genius is, no matter how heaven-defying an extraordinary genius is, they're bound to die prematurely, the old woman murmured in her heart. The young man in linen robe clenched his fists and said word by word calmly, "Granny, this matter makes me very unhappy." He didn't ask for the old woman's help. He was really unhappy in his heart, as if a stone was stuck in his chest. I knew it would be like this after I beat the young one, the old one came. In the silent and depressing atmosphere, Lin Sun showed a touch of sarcasm, but he didn't panic. Standing in the distance, Liang Chuan, a quasi-emperor, became stiff and frightened after the appearance of the old man in linen robe. But he never thought that Lin Sun, a peerless saint-king, dared to say such words in front of a great emperor at this time. For a moment, he couldn't help thinking bitterly that maybe he was really old. The ancient way of the starry sky has always been cruel. No matter how talented you are just an ant in front of absolute power. The old man in linen robe said indifferently, "I won't kill you, but you can't escape from your punishment. I will suppress you for 10,000 years as a punishment." Suppress for 10,000 years. This was even crueler than killing Lin Sun. In the pursuit of the great Tao, one wrong step would lead to every wrong step. What he missed might be time, but in fact, it was an opportunity to climb on the path of Tao. Just like in the past, if Lin Sun was suppressed, how could he have the chance to go to the Absolute Domain and the Nine Regions battlefield? How could he go to the Kunlun ruins? If he didn't enter the Absolute Domain, he wouldn't be able to prove his Tao. If he didn't enter the Nine Regions battlefield, he wouldn't be able to prove his Tao. If he didn't enter the Kunlun ruins, how could he obtain the inheritance left behind by the Master of Mountain Heart? One could imagine how many similar opportunities Lin Sun would miss if he was suppressed for 10,000 years. The old man's punishment was too merciless. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel angry. He looked at the old man in linen robe. "It seems that I'm not important enough. I was merciful and let a group of beasts go, but in exchange, I got such revenge." At this point, he laughed self-deprecatingly. His voice was low, and his eyes were terrifyingly deep. "It's my fault. If I knew this would happen, I would have killed them all." The old man in linen robe frowned. However, before he could speak, a skinny old monk appeared out of thin air. It was Du Kong from the Hidden Land realm. "Fellow Taoist, why don't you hand this kid over to the Hidden Land realm? We'll definitely repay you in the future." Du Kong's voice was hoarse. Another martial emperor. Moreover, he was here for Yu Xian. Liang Chuan's entire body was trembling. His legs were weak, and his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. The atmosphere in the surroundings was extremely oppressive at this moment. Jintian, Xianyue, Wu Ming, and the rest stood silently. No matter what the outcome was, in their hearts, Lin Sun would not be able to escape this calamity. In the courtyard, the young man in linen robe pursed his lips as he stared fixedly at the scene. What he saw today had caused an incomparable impact on his mental state, and his chest was so stuffy that it was about to explode. He even thought that if he didn't have Granny by his side, then if he encountered such a situation, would only death await him? Chapter 1926. On the guest mountain, the atmosphere was depressing. All the divine senses from the outside world were cut off. The elder in the linen robe wasn't surprised by Monk Du Kong's intervention. He just didn't understand. Is an ant-like thing worthy of you, an emperor Buddhist lord, making a move? The elder in the linen robe's voice was indifferent. This was not normal. The hidden land realm was one of the three dark giants and was rejected by the entire starry sky ancient path. An Emperor Buddha like Dukong wouldn't dare to show up on the starry sky ancient path unless it was an important matter. Otherwise, he would be targeted by some powerful figures. Monk Dukong looked calm. This man is an unforgivable heresy. He has killed many descendants of the hidden land realm over the years. After a pause, he continued, as you can see, this man's combat power is almost invincible among the top Saint Kings. Even if we send an ordinary emperor to be, I'm afraid it will be difficult to kill him. His words made Wu Ming and Jin Tian Xuanyue's hearts tremble. They had fought with Lin Sun before, so they naturally knew how terrifying his power was. They even suspected that Lin Sun hadn't used all his combat power from the beginning to the end. Heresy. The elder in the linen robe snorted. I'm afraid the real reason is more than that, right? Monk Dukong frowned. Before he could speak, the elder in the linen robe said indifferently, You can take this man away if you want, but I promise I won't stop you after 10,000 years. What he meant was that this time, Yu Xian must be suppressed for 10,000 years. Even if the hidden land realm intervened, it wouldn't work. Monk Dukong sighed softly and said, My friend, why do you have to do this? His figure flashed, and he split into two. In the field, another monk Dukong appeared. The two looked exactly the same, except that one was wearing a linen robe, and his aura was obscure and dim. The other was wearing a white robe, solemn and dignified. His whole body was flowing with the aura of great light and great perfection. Two Zen bodies of light and darkness. The elder in the linen robe narrowed his eyes. This was the most mysterious and horrifying supreme inheritance in the hidden land realm. Two Zen bodies, one cultivated the dark way of earth treasury, and the other cultivated the light way of earth treasury. Light and darkness intertwined, good and evil were separated, but the Buddha's light shone and walked through the darkness. It was extremely marvelous. The most frightening thing was that the Zen bodies of light and darkness both possessed the same cultivation level and the same battle prowess. Fighting them was like fighting one against two. My friend, if it is a duel, the hidden land realm is not afraid of death. Please reconsider. The two Dukong monks spoke at the same time. One of them had a compassionate expression while the other had a cold expression. It was an extremely shocking visual impact. He didn't hesitate to threaten me for the sake of an ant. It looks like there's surely something extraordinary about this kid, right? The old man's eyes seemed to have a myriad of swords surging within them, and they were suffused with a terrifying sharpness. Jintian Xianyue and Wu Ming's hearts tightened. Who would have thought that the two emperors wouldn't give in to each other just because of Yu Xian? As for Lin Sun, he was ignored from beginning to end. He was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and everyone wanted to slaughter him. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel an inexplicable anger in his heart. For a long time, he hadn't experienced this feeling again. Two emperors were superior. One wanted to suppress him for 10,000 years, and the other regarded him as a heretic and wanted to take him away. And they even fought for him. What do they think of themselves as prey at any time? Lin Sun's black eyes became deeper and deeper. He suddenly said, If I become an emperor one day, I will let you experience this feeling. His voice was calm. His expression was also calm without any ripples. But the feeling within it was so resolute, firm, and unquestionable. Wu Ming and Jintian Xianyue were both stunned, and immediately a sense of absurdity surged in their hearts. Did this guy really think he could survive this time? The old man in the cloth robe twitched his lips and said, You know that you are at the end of the road, but you are unwilling to complain? Childish. In this world, everyone would roar, swear and curse unwillingly when they were dying. This was undoubtedly ridiculous. No one would take it seriously. The old monk Dukong shook his head and ignored him. Buddy, I, Xian Jiuyin, have never been convinced by anyone in my life. If you die this time, I will help you realize your wish in the future. In the courtyard, the young man in linen, who had been so depressed that he was about to explode, suddenly shouted. His eyes turned red and his body trembled. The old woman was stunned. In her memory, it was the first time that she saw the young man in linen so angry and determined. In the past, he was careless, heartless, and lawless. Although his cultivation advanced rapidly, he had always been like a child who couldn't grow up. But now it seemed that he was really different. The old man in the cloth robe frowned. His surname was Xian. Was he the descendant of that ancient clan? The old monk Du Kong looked indifferent. If it weren't for the old woman, he would not hesitate to kill such a young man who talked arrogantly. Xian Juin. Lin Sun said in his heart, it turned out that this boy's surname was Xian. Since you call me buddy, I will tell you that I will not die. If you curse me again, I will beat you. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun said calmly. His words made Xian Juin's eyes wide open. How could this guy still be so stubborn before death? Wu Ming and Jin Tian Xianyue also shook their heads. Would not die? How could it be? The old man in linen robes suddenly laughed. If we confront each other, this nonentity will live for some time. Why don't we suppress him first and then confront each other? The old monk Du Kong said, okay. As he spoke, he suddenly stretched out his hand. Boom! The world was turned upside down. The supreme power of the Emperor Tao spread and turned into a dark prison, covering Lin Sun suddenly. Almost at the same time, the old man in linen robe flicked his finger, and a wisp of sword chi broke through the air, ignoring the barrier of space. The sword chi was like a mountain, pressing down. The two Emperor Realm experts attacked casually, but the power and momentum contained in them were unimaginably horrible. If they just wanted to kill Lin Sun, it would not be so troublesome. They only needed to emit the pressure of the Emperor Realm to kill Lin Sun on the spot. However, neither the old man in linen robe nor the old monk Du Kong would kill Lin Sun at this moment. The former wanted to suppress Lin Sun. The latter was worried that if Lin Sun was killed, the good fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor would be exposed and arouse the covetous eyes of the old man in linen robe. No matter who it was, they all knew that Lin Sun could not escape. The old woman hesitated for a long time, and finally sighed and gave up the plan. She was alone. Even if she saved Lin Sun at this moment, it would be difficult for her to resist the killing of two Emperor Realm experts. However, Lin Sun was rarely calm at this moment. In the heaven accessing place, the graceful figure of she had quietly walked out of the gate to heaven and she seemed to notice something and suddenly stopped. Almost at the same time, the welcoming mountain trembled violently. Dong! As if suffering from a terrible impact, a dull sound rang out. Then, the dark cage that enveloped Lin Sun shattered and dissipated like a piece of paper. The pupils of the two Du Kong monks froze at the same time. Crack! The sword that suppressed Lin Sun collapsed in the void, and the light rain scattered and turned into nothingness. The old man in linen robes' clothes were fluttering, and his pupils were bursting with divine light. This, in the courtyard in the distance, the old woman's face changed slightly. There was another Emperor Realm expert? One should know that the welcoming mountain had long been covered by the aura of the old monk Du Kong and the old man in linen robe. Ordinary people could not even sense the existence of the welcoming mountain, let alone get close. But at this moment, the power that covered the welcoming mountain was blasted away by someone in a simple and violent way. Moreover, the power was so terrifying that it destroyed the attacks of the old monk Du Kong and the old man in linen robe. The whole place was silent. Wu Ming, Jintian, Xianyue and others couldn't help but be stunned. No one had expected such a reversal at this moment. Even Lin Sun was stunned. She did not appear, but the killing disaster was resolved by someone. After that, a figure suddenly appeared in everyone's field of vision. He wore a pair of straw sandals and carried a rusty and mottled hoe on his shoulder. His skin was dark and he seemed like a farmer. No one could see where he came from, and no one noticed how he got there. It was as if he had been standing there for a long time. Standing in front of Lin Sun. Lin Sun only felt suffocated. It was just a back view, but it gave him the feeling that it was a spine that could support the world, majestic and boundless. At the same time, the old monk Du Kong and the old man in linen robe revealed solemn expressions. The middle-aged man who looked like a farmer looked inconspicuous, but they couldn't see through him. Even before this, with their cultivation, they actually didn't notice any signs when the middle-aged man appeared. "Fellow cultivator, did you come uninvited for this lad as well?" The old monk Du Kong spoke. His sleeves fluttered and his voice was like a bell. His expression was solemn, which was rare. "Is there a need to guess?" The old man in linen robe said indifferently. "This lad was so calm earlier. I'm afraid he already knew that someone would come to help." His words made the atmosphere even more oppressive. Wu Ming and Jin Tianxianyue were both shocked. Originally, they thought that Yu Xian was just a descendant of the imperial Yu family, and that he would definitely die if he came alone. Who would have thought that he actually had a helper? Moreover, it was a terrifying existence that hid his strength deeply. This guy hides his strength too deeply. In the courtyard, the young man in linen robe smiled bitterly. He felt that he was like a fool and worried about nothing. However, there was a kind of indescribable relief in his heart. At least, this guy wouldn't die for the time being. The old woman looked at the joy between the brows of the young man in linen robe and felt a little complicated. No wonder the young man never feared her. It turned out that he was really confident. The dark-skinned man stood there like a farmer standing in the field. He didn't have any power at all and seemed very dull. No matter who spoke, he didn't pay attention to them. He only turned his head and looked at Lin Sun with a simple and honest smile, as if saying, "Don't worry, I'm here." Lin Sun had vaguely guessed something, and his eyes became bright. However, before he could speak, the dark-skinned man had already turned his head and looked at the old monk Du Kong and the old man in linen robe. The smile on his face had disappeared. For words came out from his lips gently. "How do you want to die?" Chapter 1927. How do you want to die? One sentence, 4 words. But at this moment, it was like a clap of thunder that shook everyone's heart. They were stunned and almost couldn't believe it. This was the first sentence the middle-aged man with dark skin and the appearance of a farmer said after he arrived. His voice was dull and without any momentum. But even so, it was too sudden and absurd. The old man in the linen robe was a famous great emperor in the starry sky. His name was Sword Emperor Fufeng, and he had been famous for 30,000 years. Monk Dukong was an emperor Buddha in the Hidden Land realm. He cultivated the light and dark bodies. He could split himself into 2, which was equivalent to 2 emperor realm existences. Under normal circumstances, who would dare to disrespect them? But now, the dark-skinned middle-aged man's words were shocking. Asking 2 emperor realm existences, how do they want to die? This was crazy. Even the young man in the linen robe gasped. Even if his father was here, he wouldn't be able to say such domineering words, right? The old woman's eyes flashed. She was also stunned. "Ha ha!" The old man in the linen robe laughed. His clothes fluttered and his hair flew. His momentum shot up to the heavens. The elegance of Sword Emperor Fufeng was on full display at this moment. How many years has it been? Have I been living in seclusion for too long? How can I be underestimated to this extent? The old man in the linen robe's eyes were deep. His figure was like a god. His unparalleled sword will was like a landslide and a tsunami, covering the starry sky. Underestimate. The middle-aged farmer thought about it and shook his head. "You're wrong. I never underestimate anyone. But you. I really can't overestimate you." The old man in the linen robe's smile disappeared. "Is that so?" The middle-aged farmer answered seriously, "Yes." The veins on the old man's forehead bulged. His chest felt heavy. The middle-aged farmer's serious attitude didn't seem like he was mocking him, but it made people uncomfortable. You said his attitude wasn't good, but he didn't show it. His words were dull and calm, and his expression was serious. This feeling could make people vomit blood. No need to talk nonsense. Let's fight. Suddenly, Monk Dukong made his move. Two figures appeared. One was bathed in the dark Buddha's light, and the other released endless light. Boom! Between heaven and earth, the sound of Buddha was like thunder. How terrifying was the attack of an emperor! At this moment, Wu Ming and Jin Tian Xianyue felt their bodies lighten. They were teleported out of the arena and had no strength to struggle. In the field, there were two incomparably tall Buddhas, one black and one white. They filled the space, chanting Buddhist chants as if they were going to collapse the sky. Ha! With the chanting of Buddhist chants, the enormous rocking ship that was as large as a floating continent suddenly stopped in the starry sky, and the nearby stars in the surrounding void all began to shake violently. Ha! Rumbling Buddhist chants shook the area. Old Monk Space Crossing raised his fist and punched out. Tao light poured down like a heavenly river. As for the old monk Radiance Crossing Sky, he held a Buddhist staff and struck out horizontally. For a time, heaven and earth turned upside down and space collapsed. The might of the Emperor Realm appeared in the world at this moment. I only want you to choose a way to die. I have no intention of destroying this place. The dark-skinned man who looked like a farmer frowned and said in a deep voice. He didn't seem to move, but verdant ancient trees took root in the void. Their branches and leaves were luxuriant, and they spread in all directions, emitting billions of rays of light. In the blink of an eye, the rocking ship was covered by the ancient trees. The nearby starry sky was also covered by verdant branches and leaves. Looking from afar, it was as if an ancient forest had suddenly appeared in the universe. Every leaf was bigger than a star. At the same time, the middle-aged farmer suddenly stepped forward and instantly punched out 3 times. Boom! Amidst the world-shaking collision, the body of the old monk Space Crossing Sky trembled, and the dark Buddhist light that filled the sky suddenly dispersed. He coughed out blood, and his brows were tightly locked together, revealing a shocked expression. The middle-aged farmer's first punch was like a plow that swept through the acupoints, and it injured him. Clang! The second punch caused the staff of the old monk Space Crossing Sky to suddenly let out a wail, and cracks appeared on it. And his Buddhist body was directly forced back by the terrifying fist energy. With every step he took back, the Buddhist light on his body would disperse a little. When he took the 9th step, the light on his body had already become extremely dim, and his face was suffused with a dark green luster. The second punch's momentum was like a landslide and a tsunami, killing the world and destroying everything. Boom! When the third punch was thrown out, the expressions of the old monk Space Crossing Sky's 2 Buddhist bodies changed, and they didn't hesitate to gather together and attack together, executing a supreme divine ability. Great Light Dragon Elephant Seal. Great Dark Hell Prison Suppression Technique. In the void, it was as if there was an ancient divine elephant trampling through the starry sky. The stars exploded, and boundless light whistled through the void. At the same time, a black lotus bloomed above the blood purgatory, and the stamen of the flower shot out billions of rays of Buddhist light. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that if the middle-aged farmer didn't have the power to defend himself, just this Emperor Realm power would be able to explode this part of the void, causing the void to sink and all things to be destroyed. But even so, the old monk Space Crossing Sky was unable to block the third punch. Boom! The ancient divine elephant was reduced to ashes. The black lotus that suppressed the blood purgatory instantly withered. As for the old monk Space Crossing Sky's 2 Buddhist bodies, they were fiercely suppressed by the fist energy and smashed onto the ground, causing the guest-welcoming mountain to shake. Clatter! His 2 Buddhist bodies suddenly merged into one, and it was obvious that he couldn't hold on any longer. His old face was pale and gloomy, and he was suppressed to the ground, unable to break free. 3 punches. The winner was decided. When the smoke and dust dispersed, everyone was shocked. The rocking boat was covered by ancient trees that covered the sky, so it wasn't damaged, and even the guest welcoming mountain was undamaged. But the old monk space crossing sky, an Emperor realm Buddhist lord, was suppressed by 3 punches, and couldn't get up. Everything, from the beginning to the end, only happened in a flash. And from the beginning to the end, the middle-aged farmer only punched 3 times. How terrifying was the Emperor realm! In the eyes of cultivators, it was a supreme existence, as if omnipotent, able to shake the heavens and deter all directions. And the old monk space crossing sky was not an ordinary Emperor realm existence. He, who controlled the light and dark Zen bodies, was like 2 Emperor realm experts fighting together in a real battle. But even so, he was still defeated. It was a complete mess. Such a scene made Lin Sun's eyes wide open, and he was shocked. Strictly speaking, with his cultivation, he couldn't see any clues at all, and he couldn't feel the supreme mystery contained in the power of the Emperor realm. Even if it wasn't for the protection of the middle-aged farmer, he would have been killed on the spot by the horrible power of the Emperor realm at the beginning of the battle. But Lin Sun was very clear that the old monk space crossing sky could not be suppressed so easily by ordinary Emperor realm figures. Wu Ming and others were trembling all over, and their minds had been shocked, and they were completely stunned. In their hearts, the Buddha space crossing sky was like an invincible supreme existence, but now he was suppressed by 3 punches. Jintian Xianhua looked pale, and she was in a trance. The previous scene also made her suffer a great shock. The young man in linen rubbed his eyes and murmured, "Grandma, is my father as fierce as him?" The old woman fell into a rare silence, because she couldn't calm down, and her heart was full of turbulence. As an Emperor realm cultivator, he knew how horrible the power of the Emperor realm was. It was almost impossible for 2 Emperor realm cultivators to kill each other unless there was a great disparity in strength. But now, space crossing sky was suppressed by 3 punches. Did this mean that the farmer's strength wasn't just a level higher, but it had completely surpassed Dukong? As a Buddhist practitioner, you have no mercy when you fight, and you don't care about the safety of the creatures here. No wonder the descendants of the hidden land realm can only live in the dark world. The farmer's voice was dull and plain, and he still looked like a farmer. But when they looked at him again, their eyes had become different. "Who are you? Why have I never heard of such a great emperor on the starry sky ancient path?" On the ground, the old monk space crossing sky's voice was hoarse. "Me." The farmer thought about it seriously and said, "I'm a farmer." Puff. The old monk space crossing sky was so angry that he directly vomited blood. A farmer? How could a farmer have such fighting power? The others were also stunned. How could someone who could suppress an Emperor realm expert with 3 punches be a farmer? But Lin Sun believed it. Because he knew that Guyupu, the 9th senior fellow apprentice, was just a stupid woodcutter in the mountain before he started to cultivate. However, senior brother Guyupu was able to create the great Tao yellow quartz scripture after he started cultivating. He was able to suppress the founder of the Emperor Kong clan, Demon Emperor Dutian, in the Tao battles of the emperors. Which senior fellow apprentice is he? Lin Sun thought quickly. "I never lie." As if sensing that people didn't believe him, the farmer explained seriously, "It's just that I used to plant crops in the field, but now I plant some things of Tao." Everyone was stunned and felt it was ridiculous and weird. A farmer could step into the supreme emperor realm? Who would believe it? The old monk space crossing sky, who was suppressed on the ground, felt suffocated and spat out another mouthful of blood. He felt that the farmer was clearly humiliating him. Even Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his heart. This senior fellow apprentice was really an honest man, but when an honest man told the truth, it was easy to make people sad. In the field, only the old man in the cloth robe kept silent. His expression was uncertain and he didn't say a word. He didn't do anything. After witnessing the miserable situation of the old monk's space crossing sky, he didn't dare to do anything rashly. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. How do you want to die? At this time, the farmer seemed to ignore the old man in the cloth robe and looked at the old monk's space crossing sky, who was suppressed on the ground. If you kill me, the hidden land realm will be shocked because of this. If you let me go, the hidden land realm will never be your enemy in the future. The old monk's space crossing sky took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, an emperor realm cultivator was begging for mercy. No one present had ever seen such a scene before. For a moment, their hearts were in turmoil. Did the emperor realm cultivators also fear death? Impossible. The farmer shook his head with a calm and unquestionable look. The old monk's space crossing sky's heart sank. All the others present were nervous and their hearts were in their throats. If so, you are doomed to be doomed in the future. Space crossing sky's voice was hoarse. Even ants wanted to live, not to mention a man who had gone through untold hardships to become an emperor. Before his voice died away, his body suddenly turned into countless black shadows, breaking through the void and rushing to the void in all directions. Thanks to Jia, Yu Linglong, Little Lingzi, and other children for their gifts and support. Some readers said that the 9th senior brother Guyupu was a woodcutter, and this senior brother was a farmer. The goldfish suddenly thought that the protagonist should be a miner. Will there be a senior brother who is a fisherman? No, because I don't agree. Chapter 1928. Billions of figures were densely packed as they charged in all directions. No one could tell which one was old Monk Dukong. In fact, many people didn't expect that Monk Dukong, who was suppressed on the ground, still had the strength to struggle. But the farmer thought of it. Is this the body transfiguration method passed down by Ksitigarbha Buddha? But it seems that you've only mastered a little bit of it. In the muffled voice, the farmer raised his head slightly. Whoosh! Countless towering trees that covered the void of this universe swayed their branches. Every leaf that was as big as stars was flowing with brilliant light of the way. For a moment, the world was completely drowned by the light of the way. Under the cover of the light of the way, the hundreds of millions of figures transformed by Monk Dukong were incinerated and disappeared like locusts in a fire. Are you really going to kill us all? Monk Dukong's angry voice resounded with uneasiness. Yes. The farmer answered honestly. Boom. The surroundings were filled with surging light of the way. The ancient trees were like the legendary trees of the Great Path, emitting boundless divine light and energy. In just a few breaths, the hundreds of millions of figures transformed by Monk Dukong were all incinerated and wiped out on the spot. Dead? Many people swallowed their saliva with difficulty and looked shocked. That was a cultivator in the Emperor realm. However, it seemed that the farmer had killed them effortlessly. He's not dead yet, the farmer said. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, he suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed. In the distance, Wu Ming and more than a dozen descendants of Ksitigarbha didn't have time to react. Their bodies all turned into ashes and they were killed on the spot. You're so cruel. In the void, Monk Dukong's angry and unwilling voice came to an abrupt stop. The farmer said, I'm not as cruel as this old monk. In fact, these descendants of Ksitigarbha have already been killed by him using a secret method. I just killed the incarnation of this old monk. Everyone was startled. Before, they all thought that Monk Dukong had transformed into thousands of figures and escaped. Who would have thought that he could kill Wu Ming and the others and take over their bodies without making a sound? This was too terrifying. Grandma, are the people of the Hidden Land realm all so ruthless and cruel? The hemp-clothed youth was shocked. As one of the 3 giants of darkness, they are naturally different from ordinary martial cultivators, the old woman said in a low voice. She was even more shocked by the farmer's methods. He suppressed Monk Dukong with 3 punches, and then destroyed the billions of incarnations of Monk Dukong with ease. A martial emperor was killed without any struggle. This made her heart tremble and her entire body go cold. Just where did this farmer come from? Why had he never heard of such an incredible existence on the starry sky ancient path? The surroundings were silent, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. The farmer stood in front of Lin Sun and looked at the old man. Without waiting for him to speak, the cloth-robed old man took a deep breath, lowered his head, and cupped his hands. I'm Jin Tianhong, the 16th generation descendant of the monarch race, Jin Tian clan. Fellow Taoists, cultivation is profound and unfathomable. I'm far from your level, I hope fellow Taoist can show mercy. His voice was filled with bitterness. So what if you're an emperor? In the face of absolute power, they could only lower their heads. At this moment, Jin Tian Xuanyue's pretty face turned pale. She was the most dazzling talent of the young generation of the monarch race, Jin Tian clan. But just now, she was directly suppressed by Lin Sun in a head-on confrontation. And the ancestor, a famous sword emperor in the starry sky, who was worshipped by her as a god, was also forced by the situation to lower his head and bend his back. A series of blows made her feel like she was about to collapse. What pride, what conceit, what identity she was proud of, all of it was broken at this moment. Even the old woman couldn't help but be moved when she saw the cloth-robed old man lower his head. The martial emperor realm shocked the heavens and was looked up to by countless people. But who could know that the martial emperor realm would also be afraid, lower their heads, and fall? Just like at this moment, Monk Dukong was killed, and Sword Emperor Fufeng lowered his head. I don't lie, but I also like to be serious. The farmer's voice was dull. If I think it's wrong, I won't let you go even if you kneel down and kowtow. The cloth-robed old man's heart sank. The farmer said, You just said that the Jintian clan can't afford to lose face, so you want to suppress my junior brother for 10,000 years. Then let me ask you, my junior brother is being humiliated like this. If I, as his senior brother, don't help him, where will I put my face? Junior brother. Just a title, but it was earth-shattering. The cloth-robed old man's body shook in disbelief. How could an ant-like character be such a terrifying junior brother of an emperor realm cultivator? The old woman and the young man in linen clothes exchanged a look and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They thought that the farmer would be Lin Sun Sr., who would have thought that the two were actually brothers. Liang Chuan, the supreme elder of the Heavenly Sound Parlor, who had been standing far away, was dumbfounded. Everything that had happened today was like a nightmare to him. How did a Yu clan member become the junior brother of an Emperor Realm cultivator? If they had known this, the Heavenly Sound Parlor would have worshipped him like an ancestor long ago. How would they dare to slight him? It was also at this time that Liang Chuan finally understood why the farmer dared to kill the primitive Taoist court cultivators so recklessly. His senior brother dared to kill an Emperor Realm cultivator without blinking an eye. With such a senior brother, what wouldn't he dare to do? No wonder, no wonder. Liang Chuan's lips trembled and he was in a trance. Only Lin Sun smiled. Sure enough, it was his senior brother. No wonder she didn't show up. I am willing to pay the price. The cloth-robed old man's voice became more and more bitter as he lowered his head. The farmer said, Let me ask you again, if my junior brother is an ant, what am I as his senior brother? Previously, the cloth-robed old man called Lin Sun an ant, full of disdain and contempt. He saw Lin Sun as a prey that could be slaughtered at any time. But now, facing the farmer's question, his face was pale and he was speechless. How else could he explain? The farmer said again, My junior brother has been merciful and didn't kill anyone in the fight between young people. But for the so-called dignity of the clan, he let you, an Emperor Realm cultivator, fight in person. Isn't it too much to bully others? The cloth-robed old man's body stiffened and his lips wriggled. But in the end, he sighed softly and had nothing to say. If you have a high realm, you can regard others as ants and take whatever you want. If you are of noble birth, you can look down on others and trample on them at will. The farmer thought for a while and then said, "This is indeed something that has happened every day since ancient times. People are almost used to it." He looked serious and rarely solemn, but in my case this is not right. There is no noble or lowly life, no strong or weak. Only in this way can we know the meaning of all living beings and have a heart of reverence. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. There was no noble or lowly life, no strong or weak. This should be the great Tao aspiration that senior brother made, right? He's just a farmer, yet he's able to say such things. Is this the reason why he's so accomplished in the Emperor realm? The old woman was lost in thought. The Emperor realm was the cultivation of the state of mind, which was mysterious. The level of a person's achievements was closely related to the beliefs he held. The farmer gave off a simple and inconspicuous feeling, but the state of mind and strength he possessed could be said to be extremely shocking. The cloth-robed old man closed his mouth and said nothing. He had already admitted defeat and was only waiting for the result. The farmer sighed softly and said, "You don't like to reason, and you don't want to listen to reason. But reason is the truth of the great way. If you don't reason, what is the point of seeking the great way?" Lin Sun was shocked. Reason, the truth of the great way? This kind of elaboration on the great way made Lin Sun feel enlightened. "Senior brother, what's the biggest reason?" He couldn't help asking. The farmer smiled honestly and raised a fist. "I have thought about it for many years, and finally found that the reason is here." Fist? Lin Sun was stunned. "Yes, whoever has the bigger fist has the bigger reason." The farmer looked serious. He was not joking. Whether it is the struggle for the great way or the struggle for orthodoxy, it is inseparable from fighting after all. Since there is a fight, whoever has the bigger fist will win. If you win the struggle for orthodoxy, your reason will become the reason of the world. Lin Sun asked, "In this case, why do you still want to reason with him?" The farmer shook his head. "Junior brother, when you meet someone you can reason with, you don't need to use your fists. Fists are used to deal with unreasonable people. Just like that old monk, he just attacked when he wanted to. I can only use my fists to reason with him." Lin Sun looked at the cloth-robed old man and said, "Senior brother, how are you going to reason with him?" The farmer said, "Junior brother, what do you think?" At this moment, all eyes were on Lin Sun, especially the cloth-robed old man and Jin Tian Xianwei, who couldn't help but feel nervous. Even the old woman and the lad were curious about Lin Sun's answer. Everyone knew that Lin Sun's answer would affect the life and death of the cloth-robed old man. Lin Sun said without hesitation, "How about suppressing him for 10,000 years? The face of the cloth-robed old man suddenly changed, but he was slightly relieved in his heart. 10,000 years? To a great emperor, it wasn't enough to affect a great emperor. But at this time, the farmer shook his head and criticized Lin Sun. "Junior brother, why are you more honest than me? Honest people are the easiest to suffer losses." Lin Sun was stunned, and his lips twitched imperceptibly. He finally realized the power of an honest man's word. "He is different from you. The road to the Emperor realm does not depend on the length of time you are trapped. What you lack most now is time." The farmer said seriously, "Therefore, his punishment to you is too heavy, but your punishment to him is too light. This is unfair." Lin Sun originally thought that this senior brother was a man of few words. Who would have thought that he was so serious and talkative when he was reasoning with him? However, Lin Sun didn't hate his temperament at all. On the contrary, he felt unspeakable and comfortable in his heart. Chapter 1929. To the cloth-robed elder, the farmer's words were like a heavy hammer that made his heart sink. It was about to sink to the bottom. It was obvious that the farmer did not intend to let him go just like that. The feeling of his fate being controlled by someone else and being judged made the cloth-robed elder's state of mind suffer. Ever since he became an emperor, it had been too long since he had experienced such a feeling. No one noticed that on the farmer's sleeve, a pink rose the size of a thumb bloomed. At the same time, a gentle voice sounded in the farmer's mind. 13th senior brother, in the ancient times, the ancestor of the Jintian clan, the White Emperor, once fought alongside senior brother Xue. Since this person is the descendant of the White Emperor, it was not easy for him to achieve Dao. Just let him go. The farmer scratched his head and replied in his mind. Juan Huan, before he could finish, he was interrupted by the gentle voice. Don't try to reason with me. I'm not in the mood to listen. The farmer smiled bitterly in his mind. Also, don't let the news of you being here leak out. I have already been targeted by those old bastards. You cannot be targeted as well. The voice completely disappeared at this point. The pink rose that appeared on the farmer's sleeves also withered and disappeared. The farmer sighed. Then, he looked at the cloth-robed elder, who looked like he was ready to be slaughtered, and said, You have a good ancestor. These words seemed very abrupt and inexplicable, but it made the eyes of the cloth-robed elder brighten. As expected, the farmer said in the next moment, However, you can avoid death, but you cannot escape punishment. The cloth-robed elder said without hesitation, No matter what kind of compensation or punishment, I am willing to accept it. The farmer took out a gray seed and said, This is the seed of the locking heart herb of the netherworld. Swear not to reveal what happened today and swallow it. Locking heart herb of the netherworld. It was a wondrous item that could seal an oath within and plant it in a cultivator's state of mind. Once the oath was broken, the locking heart herb of the netherworld would wither and turn into a unique type of ash, corroding and staining the cultivator's state of mind. This request was too simple. The cloth-robed elder made the oath without hesitation and swallowed the seed. Seeing this, the farmer nodded and said, My junior brother also needs to be compensated. As for what the compensation would be, he didn't say. However, the linen-robed elder agreed once more. Compensation? No matter how outrageous Lin Sun's request was, he could agree to it. Seeing that he was so straightforward, the farmer's expression softened a little, and he said, I advise you not to bring shame to your ancestors in the future. The cloth-robed old man was stunned, and a thought couldn't help but appear in his mind. Could it be that this person actually knows the first ancestor? At that moment, the farmer took out another Lockhart Netherworld herb seed and handed it to Jin Tian Xianyue. How could Jin Tian Xianyue not know what to do? He also made an oath and swallowed the item, but his expression was a little dim. She, who was proud and arrogant, had suffered too many blows today, and it was too heavy. After that, the farmer pointed into the distance. You can leave now. The old man bowed and expressed his thanks. Then, he turned around and left with Jin Tian Xianyue. He was afraid that the farmer would change his mind if he stayed any longer. And you? The farmer looked at Liang Chuan in the distance. The latter shuddered and almost fell to the ground. With such a poor temperament, it's no wonder he has no fate to become an emperor. The farmer shook his head. In the end, Liang Chuan also made an oath and swallowed the seed of Lockhart Netherworld herb. He didn't resist at all, but felt lucky to escape from death. The farmer waved his sleeve, and Liang Chuan disappeared from the guest mountain. Junior brother, you won't blame me for not killing that old man, will you? A look of embarrassment appeared on the farmer's dark face. Anyone who saw him would think that he was a farmer. He didn't look like a horrible existence who had just killed an emperor realm and forced another emperor realm to bow his head. I'm very happy in my heart, and my mind is clear. Lin Sun said with a smile. What a clear mind. The farmer also grinned happily. He couldn't help but want to reason with Lin Sun again, but he held back in the end. It was the first time they met, so it was better not to leave such an old-fashioned impression on his junior brother. Junior brother, wait a moment. Although it's over, there are still some things that need to be said. The farmer said, and then disappeared into thin air. In the courtyard, the young man in linen clothes was puzzled. According to the farmer's style of doing things, It was impossible for him to let the old man off so easily. Yet, it ended just like that. There must be more to it than meets the eye. Just as the young man was thinking, the old woman next to him suddenly said, "Young master, stay here and don't move." The young man was dazed, and his heart tightened. Was the farmer not going to let his granny go? Just as he thought of this, his vision blurred and he lost his senses. At the same time, the farmer appeared in the courtyard and looked at the old woman. The old woman spoke first. "Tao friend, do you also want this old woman to eat a core-locking netherworld grass?" Wisps of profound light surged in her murky eyes, and her entire aura changed along with it. The farmer's voice was heavy. "You're so beautiful, you're not an old woman. This kind of disguise can't fool me." The old woman was dazed. An honest person would care about whether someone else was beautiful or not. However, when she spoke again, her appearance had already silently changed from an old woman to a great beauty that was peerless like a celestial. She wore a green dress, and her black hair was tied up in a bun. Her skin was smooth and white, and her eyes were like the moon in the sky. Her red lips formed a perfect curve. There was a bright red cinnabar dot between her eyebrows. She stood there, her green dress fluttering, and her figure was like an illusion. "Since you've seen through me, there's no need for me to hide anymore." The woman in the green dress spoke. Her voice was as clear as jade, and it was as pleasant as the sound of nature. This was a peerless empress of peerless beauty. However, the farmer ignored her and said, "Since you're from the Xian family, you naturally don't need the core-locking netherworld grass." He had a serious expression. "I'm here to tell you that my little junior brother doesn't ask for anyone to be his scapegoat or drag you down with him. He won't push his luck, and he won't overestimate himself. You can think of him as weak, but his future achievements will only be greater than yours." Then, he turned around and left. The woman in the green dress was stunned. She was prepared to fight with all her strength if the farmer dared to ask her to swallow the core-locking netherworld grass. However, he had never expected that the other party had only come to say such words. For a moment, she felt a tightness in her chest. Revenge. This seemingly honest farmer had actually witnessed everything that had happened on the guest mountain today. He knew that he had impolitely warned that young man. He came here to avenge the young man. The woman in the green dress gritted her teeth. "Greater achievements than me? I've lived for so many years and seen the rise and fall of the emperor realm." She was indeed a little annoyed. They were both emperors, but she was reprimanded in this way. This feeling was really unpleasant. At this time, there was a happy smile on the farmer's dark face. He thought that what he had done this time could satisfy his junior brother. This should be the responsibility of a senior brother, right? "Junior brother, my common name is too vulgar. Since I joined the sect, my master has given me the Dharma name Pujin, and I'm ranked 13th. When he saw Lin again, the farmer introduced himself. "Before I joined the sect, I was indeed a farmer in the field, and I couldn't read a word. Later, I was enlightened by my master and embarked on the road of cultivation. I'm different from Guyupu, the 9th senior brother. He's really stupid like a block of wood. I'm too honest to tell lies. But master said that all living things in the world are different, and honest people have their own advantages. I'm best at farming. After joining the sect, I helped to take care of and cultivate all kinds of spiritual plants. Later, I traveled around the world and tasted all kinds of spiritual grains, spiritual plants, and spiritual medicines. Finally, I found the way I wanted to pursue." As he said, the farmer, who called himself Pujin, took out a jade slip and handed it to Lin. "Junior brother, this is the Book of Herbs in Heaven, which I personally compiled. It's a collection of spiritual plants that grow in many worlds on the ancient way of the starry sky. It's not a cultivation method, so it's not very precious. Take it, and if you encounter spiritual plants that you can't recognize in the future, you can take it out and have a look." Lin Sun opened it and couldn't help but gasp after a while. The types of spiritual objects recorded within the myriad herb scripture were simply as vast as the ocean, and they were innumerable. Every single spiritual object was specifically recorded in detail. For example, the name, shape, use, place of growth, and so on were accompanied by vivid illustrations. For alchemists in the world, this kind of scripture could be regarded as the supreme treasure that could only be found by chance, and its value was immeasurable. Even a practitioner like Lin Sun could deeply understand the essence and mystery of the spiritual plants of heaven and earth by reading this scripture, which was of great benefit to his cultivation. It should be known that all things in the world were nurtured by Tao. The mystery of Tao was actually hidden in all phenomena, all things in the world. And what the practitioners perceived and sought for the way of cultivation was the things existing in the world. Thank you for imparting the scripture to me, senior brother. Lin Sun bowed seriously. Pujin hurriedly waved his hand. You and I are brothers. Don't be so polite. He looked up at the void in the distance and sighed. There's not much time left. If I stay here any longer, I will be noticed. Junior brother, the way is long. I'm looking forward to the day when you become an emperor. His voice was full of laughter and expectation. Where are you going, senior brother? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Pujin grinned. To the place where wandering ghosts should go. After saying that, he carried the rusty stick and walked forward. With one step, he was already above the void of the starry sky. Junior brother, see you later. Pujin's honest laughter rang in Lin Sun's heart for a long time before it disappeared. Senior brother, see you later. Lin Sun looked up and murmured. P.S. Thank Xie Ji, Huang Lianping and other students for their gifts and support. Chapter 1930. As the farmer, Pujin, left, the invisible force covering the welcoming mountain disappeared, and the ancient trees that shrouded the entire boat also disappeared. Everything returned to its previous tranquil state. To most of the passengers on the airship, they utterly didn't notice that numerous extremely dangerous and shocking battles had erupted just now. They also didn't know that if it weren't for the farmer's protection, they and the boat would have been turned into dust in Zhou. But there was still a lot of news. There were many other passengers living on the welcoming mountain. At the beginning, everyone saw that Lin Sun had killed Wu Yunlian, the descendant of the Tianyin Pavilion, and suppressed Jin Tianqi and other strong cultivators of the Jin Tian clan. It also caused Wu Ming, the descendant of the Hidden Land realm, and Jin Tian Xianyue, the proud daughter of the Jin Tian clan, to fight together, but at the end of the battle, both Wu Ming and Jin Tian Xianyue were defeated by Lin Sun. Many people even saw the appearance of Sword Emperor Fufeng at the last moment. At that time, many people sighed and thought that Lin Sun would die this time, and the starry ancient path would lose an amazing ultimate Saint King forever. As for what happened after the appearance of Sword Emperor Fufeng, no one could see it. At this moment, the boat returned to its usual calm. All the cultivators on and off the welcoming mountain breathed a sigh of relief, and then began to pay attention to the result of the battle. After that, a scene that caused all of them to feel disbelief appeared. Yu Xian was not dead. How is this possible? Many people almost went crazy. How could this guy not be dead? This was too unexpected. In the following time, people found many strange things one after another. For example, the group of people from the Hidden Land realm who lived in the courtyard at the foot of the mountain had all disappeared. It was as if they had evaporated from the world. The boat sails in the starry sky. With the strength of the descendants of the Xitigarbha, unless they are led by someone in the Emperor realm. Doesn't this mean that they are very likely to be in trouble? Countless cultivators were shocked in their hearts, and they felt shocked. If their guesses are true, then who killed them? At the same time, the Jin Tian clan was also very abnormal. Both Sword Emperor Fufeng and Jin Tian Xianyue did not come out, and did not mention anything about what had happened before. This caused everyone to be shocked and confused. Yu Xian suppressed Jin Tianqi and the others and defeated Jin Tian Xianyue. Sword Emperor Windraiser was going to swallow his anger like this? A great emperor. How could he give up just like that? Question after question surged into the hearts of those cultivators, and in the end, all of them transformed into a single question. Exactly what happened after Sword Emperor Windraiser made an appearance? Why was Yu Xian still alive? Why did Xidagarba's successor disappear? And why didn't the monarch race, the Jintian clan, say anything? This news quickly spread throughout the rowboat, causing an uproar and confusion. Yu Xian, this expert from the Yu clan, an imperial clan, had become the center of attention in a single leap. Everyone was shocked by the heaven-defying battle prowess he displayed, but at the same time, they were extremely confused. Just what method did he use to survive this extremely dangerous storm? Just look at the Heavenly Music Parlor's reaction. Yu Xian didn't just kill Wu Yunlian. He even killed Yu Jun and a group of important figures from the Heavenly Music Parlor. If the Heavenly Music Parlor chose to tolerate this, then it proves that something is definitely not normal. Many people came to this conclusion and began to pay attention to the movements of the Heavenly Music Parlor. They didn't dare to ask the Jintian clan, nor did they have the guts to ask Lin Sun about the cause of the matter. If they wanted to know the truth, they could only pay attention to the movements of the Heavenly Music Parlor. In a grand hall, a group of important figures gathered. Xiao Yunkong and Ouyang Pei, who used to guard Zhuang Yunji, were also here. Zhuang Yunji was also here. But no matter who it was, their expressions were extremely gloomy and ugly. The Supreme Elder Liang Chuan sat at the head of the table, his expression numb and his voice hoarse. These days, many things have happened on our rowboat and caused a lot of turmoil. His words evoked everyone's memories. At first, the people of the primitive Dao court were all killed, causing turmoil. Then, the Supreme Elder Huadian, who was pursuing the murderer, knelt in front of the old lady, causing an uproar. And today, Jin Tianqi and the other cultivators of the Jintian clan were beaten, and Yu Jun and Wu Yunlian were killed. This was like a bolt of lightning, throwing the Heavenly Music Parlor into chaos. This was too many and too heavy a blow. And now, everyone knew that these things were all done by one person, Yu Xian, a figure from the Yu clan of the Imperial clan, who was almost ignored before. But now, at the thought of this name, people gnashed their teeth with hatred and almost went crazy. Only Zhuang Yunji's expression was very complicated. When the rowboat passed by the Diu world, she personally picked up Lin Sun and arranged for Yu Xian to be Lu Qingyan's guard. At that time, she just wanted to use Yu Xian's identity to make others have scruples and not dare to kill Lu Qingyan easily. But unexpectedly, Yu Xian's identity didn't play any role, and even she, Lu Qingyan's master, was grounded. Originally, Zhuang Yunji was disheartened. But what she never expected was that Yu Xian's identity was useless, but his combat power played an incredible destructive role. He killed the cultivators of the primitive Dao court. He suppressed Jin Tianqi and the others. Even Yu Jun, Wu Yunlian, and others were killed by him without hesitation. This series of events caused Zhuang Yunji to feel as if she was in a dream. It was so shocking yet so unreal. But in any case, she couldn't hate Yu Xian at all, because she knew that Yu Xian didn't have to do this. Everything was for her disciple Lu Qingyan. Uncle Master Liang Chuan, why did you spare Yu Xian? Now it's said that Yu Xian is still alive. Ouyang Pei said angrily with a livid face. His disciple Zhan Bing was killed like Wu Yunlian, which made him feel like a knife was twisted in his heart. That's right. All of this calamity was caused by Yu Xian. How can such an unpardonable person be allowed to live? The others present also gnashed their teeth and spoke out. Liang Chuan's heart was bitter, and his expression was uncertain. Kill Yu Xian? Monk Dukong of the Hidden Land realm was dead, and Sword Emperor Fufeng bowed his head. Who dared to kill him? But he dared not say these things, and he couldn't say them. He could only let them rot in his stomach. Everyone, at the end of the day, Yu Xian did it for Qingyan's good. If you didn't target Qingyan, how could these disasters have happened? Liang Chuan sighed softly and said, I called you here to tell you that from today on, no matter who it is, no one is allowed to treat Yu Xian as an enemy. If anyone dares to take revenge, I promise to kill him immediately. At the end of his words, his expression was full of murderous intent. The main hall was dead silent. Everyone was stunned and almost couldn't believe their ears. Yu Xian was the culprit. Why did highest elder Liang Chuan seem to be determined to protect him? Liang Chuan, you're a bastard. Suddenly, an incomparably angry roar sounded. Hua Dian's figure broke through the air, his momentum fierce. His expression was terrifyingly savage, and his eyes almost split apart from rage. So many things have occurred, yet you don't take revenge and instead protect that bastard surnamed you. You have simply smeared your heart with lard. His roar was like thunder, shaking the main hall and filling the air with murderous intent, causing many to hold their breath. How terrifying would a quasi-emperor be when he was enraged? Senior brother Huadian, you've been in closed-door cultivation, so you don't know the truth. If you trust me, then listen to me. I won't make a mistake. Liang Chuan took a deep breath and spoke with a stern expression. He knew that Huadian was angry because his granddaughter, Wu Yunlian, had been killed by Yu Xian. You're trying to persuade me? Huadian was so angry that his hair stood on end and his body trembled. You coward, trash, if you don't kill that bastard, I'll go. Liang Chuan's heart tightened and his expression changed. Senior brother, don't do anything stupid. If you do, everyone in the Heavenly Music Pavilion will be implicated. However, Huadian refused to listen to him. He said coldly, I'll deal with you when I return. He then turned around to leave. However, as soon as he turned around, his vision blurred. He was blocked by a figure. It was an old man in a linen robe. His face was thin and his expression was indescribably cold. Liang Chuan's heart skipped a beat. His legs turned to jelly and he cursed under his breath. Who dares to stop me? Get lost. At this moment, the enraged Huadian had attacked without the slightest hesitation. Boom! He slammed his palm forward. However, in the next moment, he was lifted up by the neck by a hand. Huadian was shocked and completely sobered up from his rage. At the same time, the linen robe elder said, Why is there such an idiot in the Heavenly Music Pavilion? Why don't I help you deal with him? No, Liang Chuan was just about to stop him when he heard a loud explosion. Huadian, a great emperor of the Great Emperor realm, exploded into pieces and turned into ashes that scattered all over the ground. Liang Chuan's vision darkened and he was in a daze. The rest of the people in the hall were also completely shocked at this moment. Each and every one of them were paralyzed on the ground, their faces pale and filled with terror. Killing a great emperor with a flick of his finger. They immediately guessed the linen robe elder's identity. However, they never thought that sword monarch Fufeng would appear here and stop Elder Huadian from killing Yu Xian. This was simply unimaginable. One should know that Yu Xian had offended many people from the Jintian clan. From today onward, whoever dares to go against little friend Yu Xian will be going against the Jintian clan. The linen robe elder didn't explain either. After saying that, he disappeared into thin air. There was a dead silence in the hall. Everyone felt like they were on the verge of collapsing. Elder Liang Chuan's unusual behavior to protect Yu Xian was unacceptable. But now, even Sword Monarch Fufeng stood out and expressed his support for Yu Xian. Only Liang Chuan knew that Sword Monarch Fufeng had no choice but to do this. Chapter 1931. Huadian, the Quasi-Emperor, was killed. Both Fufeng Sword Emperor and Liang Chuan, the Supreme Elder of Heavenly Sound Pavilion, expressed their support for Yu Xian in person. Every single cultivator that found out about this was flabbergasted, and it was like they'd heard the most bizarre thing in the world. Yu Xian, who caused so many troubles and was regarded as the culprit, was not only alive, but also better than anyone expected. At least from now on, no one on this Fuyushu ship would dare to harm him. What on earth happened at that time? Why did Fuyao Sword Emperor and Liang Chuan act so strangely? There must be some unknown secrets about Yu Xian. For a time, there was a lot of discussion. At the same time, Lin Sun was also helpless. After learning all kinds of news from the outside world, Lu Qinyan seemed to be possessed. After a long time, she began to ask all kinds of questions. She looked like a curious baby. Lin Sun explained everything that could be explained, but he couldn't tell Lu Qinyan about Pu Zhen and what happened that night. Lu Qinyan was obviously unwilling to give up, so she began to beat around the bush, almost acting like a spoiled child. But Lin Sun had no choice but to be vague and keep his mouth shut. At present, his identity was still Yu Xian. Even if he exposed a lot of strength and aroused a lot of suspicion, at least no one knew his true identity. In the end, Lu Qinyan didn't get the reason. However, the way she looked at Lin Sun had become different. She looked as if she was going to figure out his secret sooner or later, which made Lin Sun uncomfortable all over. From that day on, Lin Sun's life became extremely peaceful. In addition to cultivation, he thought about what would happen after he arrived in the Hongmeng world. Occasionally, he would go out, but no matter where he appeared, he would encounter many strange eyes along the way. There was awe, curiosity, doubt, and confusion. That feeling made him feel like a different person. Even the young man in linen, who claimed to be Xian Zhuyin, would lie on the wall and throw out many doubts, such as, "Dude, which big shot are you the descendant of? Brother, is that senior who likes to reason really your senior brother? Brother, you can't blame me for leaving you to die. I'm truly powerless. However, can't you tell me the truth? Are you a descendant of the imperial clan, the Yu clan?" Brother, of course, Lin Sun couldn't answer, so he just stayed in the courtyard and didn't go out, focusing on cultivation. During this period, Zhuang Yunji also came to tell Lin that the primitive Taoist court was still a big trouble. When they reached the primordial world, the successor of the primordial Tao court, Kong Yu, would definitely not let the matter rest. Lin Sun didn't say anything about it. Not only was Kong Yu a descendant of the primeval Tao court, but he was also a pure-blooded descendant of the imperial Kong family. His identity was not simple at all. But Lin Sun didn't care at all. After all, Kong Yu's ancestor, the demon emperor of Dutian, had been suppressed by Guyupu for countless years. Right now, the primordial spirit of the demonic Tharch of Dutian was suppressed in the great Tao bottomless tower. In less than 10 years, it would be completely refined. Under such circumstances, how could Lin Sun care about the threat from Kong Yu? Sword Emperor Fufeng also came. He was very gentle and didn't treat Lin Sun as a junior from beginning to end. He intended to make some compensation to Lin Sun. Although the 13th senior brother Pu Zhen spared him once, he proposed that Lin Sun should be compensated. Sword Emperor Fufeng didn't dare to take it lightly. But Lin Sun shook his head and said that he didn't need any compensation. This made Sword Emperor Fufeng feel helpless. No compensation? How could he do that? During this period of time, the problem of compensation had almost become a sore point for Sword Emperor Fufeng. Compensation was necessary, but he didn't know what to compensate. For example, in the beginning, he killed Hua Dian to show his protective attitude towards Lin Sun. In fact, he had already begun to compensate Lin Sun. But obviously this was far from enough. What should I compensate? Cultivation method? He probably doesn't care about it at all. Treasures? With such a senior brother in the Emperor realm, how could he lack treasures? In the courtyard, Sword Emperor Fufeng was very conflicted. Old ancestor Yu Xian's senior brother has already left. Why are you so conflicted about compensation? Jintian Xianyue didn't understand. Her old ancestor was Sword Emperor Fufeng, who shook the starry sky. Perhaps he wasn't a match for the farmer, but he was a true Emperor realm expert. Now that the farmer had already left, why was there a need to be so serious about compensation? Lass, you don't understand. Sword Emperor Fufeng sighed. The road to Emperor realm is filled with obstacles. It's not as simple as you think. I've been an emperor for 30,000 years, but until now I've only touched the threshold of no self, no world. This is only the first barrier on the path to the Emperor realm, and it's called unobtrusiveness. Since the ancient times, more than half of all the people that have stepped foot into the Emperor realm have been obstructed before this first barrier. Hearing this, Jintian Xianyue was stunned. He had been an emperor for 30,000 years, but he had only touched the threshold of the first obstacle of Emperor realm? Then how difficult would the road to Emperor realm be? Sword Emperor Fufeng's voice was low, like that old monk Dukong. Don't be fooled by his control of the light and darkness Zen body and the body transformation art of Ksitigarbha Buddha's inheritance. But on the road to Emperor realm, he's at about the same level as me. As for the old woman beside the young man surnamed Xian, she might be slightly stronger, but she's at most at the first level of Emperor realm. But that farmer is different. As he spoke up to hear, Sword Emperor Fufeng's eyes flashed with imperceptible shock, and he fell into silence. After waiting for a long time and not getting a reply, Jintian Xianyue couldn't help but ask, "Old ancestor, could it be that he has already crossed the first obstacle of Emperor realm?" Sword Emperor Fufeng shook his head. Even someone who has crossed the first obstacle of Emperor realm can't easily suppress old monk Dukong with 3 punches. His words caused Jintian Xianyue to gasp. Could it be that his realm is even higher? Sword Emperor Fufeng said, "Yes, even higher. As for how high it is, I'm unable to see it with my realm." As he spoke up to hear, Sword Emperor Fufeng sighed in his heart. Back then, he took the initiative to lower his head and admit defeat because there was no way to resist, otherwise, he would definitely die. The existence of Emperor realm might seem impressive, but in the eyes of those in the same realm, this realm was extremely difficult. If the Emperor realm was said to be an extremely dangerous mountain, then he, Sword Emperor Fufeng, had only been lingering at the foot of the mountain for 30,000 years. As for that farmer, he had probably already ascended the mountain. As for where he was, Sword Emperor Fufeng couldn't see it. Jintian Xianyue asked, "Old ancestor, no matter how strong that person is, didn't he not make things too difficult for us in the end?" "You don't understand." Sword Emperor Fufeng said, "I'm sure that he already had the intention to kill me, but he changed his mind in the end. If I'm not wrong, it must be because of our ancestor." Jintian Xianyue was stunned. She clearly remembered that the farmer said, "You have a good ancestor." Could it be that he recognizes our ancestor? Jintian Xianyue had a shocked expression. The Jintian clan's ancestor was the primordial White Emperor, a supreme figure, a legend who had personally created White Emperor City. Before him, Sword Emperor Fufeng was merely a 16th-generation descendant of the Jintian clan. There was a huge gap in seniority. Even if he doesn't recognize him, he must have given face to our ancestor. Sword Emperor Fufeng said, "Under such circumstances, how can I not take his words to heart?" As he spoke up to hear, looking at the graceful and beautiful Jintian Xianyue sitting in front of him, Sword Emperor Fufeng's heart suddenly moved. "Xianyue, you've fought with Yu Xian before. What do you think of his strength?" Jintian Xianyue pondered. "I can only describe him as unfathomable. I suspect that he can even be ranked in the top 30 of the All Heavens King Sage board. He's only at the peak early Saint King realm now. If he continues to improve in the future, his strength will only be more terrifying." Speaking of this, she sighed faintly. "Although I was defeated by him, I have to admit that his attainments in the peak Saint King realm are much higher than mine." Sword Emperor Fufeng was silent for a moment and said, Xianyue, sometimes a disaster can also become an opportunity. This is the case now. Are you willing to fight for it? Jintian Xianyue was startled and said, "Please enlighten me, ancestor." On the same day, the boat that had gradually calmed down once again caused an uproar because of a piece of news. The peerless fairy of the Jintian clan, Jintian Xianyue, wants to follow Yuxian to cultivate. For this, she didn't hesitate to wait in front of Yuxian's door. As soon as the news came out, everyone was dumbfounded. The Jintian clan, an imperial clan, was one of the top ancient clans in the starry sky. There had been many Emperor Realm cultivators from this clan, and Jintian Xianyue was the most dazzling star of the current generation. For example, she even had Sword Emperor Fufeng accompanying her on this trip. But now, she wanted to follow Lin Sun and act as a Dao servant. This was too shocking. Xianyue Fairy, how can she do this? Many cultivators who had been admiring her were heartbroken because of this. Yuxian is really a lucky guy. There were also many envious and jealous voices. Not only did Golden Sky Xianyue possess an outstanding appearance that made her seem like a celestial maiden of the moon, her background was extremely noble as well. If one was able to gain her favor, it would be sufficient to cause one to be overwhelmed by the favor. But now, she took the initiative to follow Yuxian to cultivate. Who could accept this at once? No, I don't agree. Some people even shouted and gnashed their teeth, thinking that Yuxian was not worthy of Jintian Xianyue at all. Soon, many people bluntly attacked. Didn't you see that Sword Emperor Fufeng didn't refuse? Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to refuse? In short, Jintian Xianyue's action caused too much uproar. Countless people were shocked and couldn't believe it. But to everyone's astonishment, Yuxian refused. It was said that even the gate of the courtyard was not opened, leaving Jintian Xianyue, the peerless beauty, standing alone outside the door. Chapter 1932. Fix a Bug. The 13th senior fellow apprentice of Mind Mountain was Li Xianwei, known as Green Sky Sword Emperor, who once gave Lin Sun the Great Way immeasurable bottle. When the protagonist left Kunlun ruins, he defeated Sword Emperor, Jade Huzi, Buddha Kunjiu, Dark War Emperor, Red Fire Thunder Emperor, and Jiuzhen Sword Emperor. Because of Goldfish's carelessness, she made a mistake in the ranking of the farmer Pu Zhen. The article had been revised. Pu Zhen was ranked 11th. Sorry, my friends. I've been busy with my wedding recently. I'm a little tired. I feel dizzy. The following text. Jintian Xianyue, dressed in a plain dress, had a pale face. She didn't expect that she would be rejected before she even met Yuxian. She was extremely proud and conceited in the past. She hesitated and deliberated for a long time before she lowered her head and was willing to play the role of a Taoist servant. But she never thought that she would be rejected for a moment. She couldn't help feeling ashamed and frustrated. But in the end, Jintian Xianyue held back. She didn't leave, nor did she get angry. She just stood in front of Lin Sun's courtyard. Alone, he stood there in silence. No matter how many rumors about her spread on the ship, she seemed to turn a deaf ear to them. Senior Yuxian, Jintian Xianyue is a proud girl. She is accompanied by a martial emperor. Are you just going to leave her there? In the courtyard, Lu Qinyan couldn't help asking. She couldn't bear to do that. Lin Sun, who was studying the Book of Herbs of Heaven, said casually, "That's her own business. It has nothing to do with me." He felt helpless. He had vaguely guessed that the reason why Jintian Xianyue wanted to be his Taoist servant was probably because of Sword Emperor Fufeng's instruction. But the point was that Lin Sun couldn't agree at all. Because Jintian Xianyue was extremely famous, if she followed him, it would inevitably attract a lot of attention. In this way, it would be very easy for his true identity to be exposed. Lin Sun asked, "By the way, we will arrive at the Hongmeng world in a few months. What's your plan, Miss Qinyan?" Lu Qinyan hesitated for a moment, but still said, Master said that there is a mysterious place called Dayan Pure Land in the Hongmeng world. The cultivators there are all senior masters who have entered the Tao through temperament. Master has promised to bring me there. If I can cultivate in the pure land of Dayan, I won't have to fear Kong Yu's threat. Lin Sun said, that would be great. He couldn't expose his identity. When he arrived at the Hongmeng world, he was bound to be separated from Lu Qinyan. At that time, he was doomed to be unable to continue to take care of Lu Qinyan. If Lu Qinyan could cultivate in the Dayan Pure Land, Lin wouldn't have to worry about her anymore. Thinking of this, Lin Sun asked, Miss Qinyan, do you know whether the Dayan Pure Land accepts successors? Lu Qinyan shook her head. Master only said to give it a try. Whether it succeeds or not depends on fate. It depends on fate, Lin Sun sighed in his heart. If so, there was not much hope. He thought for a moment, then stood up and walked out of the courtyard. Outside the courtyard, looking at Lin Sun who opened the door and came out, Jintian Xianyue showed a look of surprise, and then became a little nervous. Lin Sun didn't care about this and said directly, Miss Xianyue, you can go back and tell Sword Emperor Fufeng that if he wants to compensate me, he only needs to do one thing for me. Jintian Xianyue was stunned and asked, what is it? Lin Sun transmitted his voice to her. After hearing this, Jintian Xianyue's beautiful face showed a touch of complexity. Taoism peer, in your opinion, I, Jintian Xianyue, am inferior to a successor of Tianyin Pavilion? Without waiting for an answer, she turned around and left. Her heart was full of bitterness. She, Jintian Xianyue, was a pure-blood descendant of the dignified Jintian clan, a peerless talent who ranked 49th on the Holy King list after 180 years of cultivation. Now, she didn't hesitate to bow her head and be willing to serve as a Taoism servant, but was refused. But Yu Xian took the initiative to propose a condition for compensation for an artistic practitioner, Lu Qinyan. Such a contrast also made the proud Jintian Xianyue suffer a blow. Watching her leave, Lin Sun shook his head and walked back to the courtyard. He said that as long as I help Lu Qinyan enter the Dayan Pure Land, it will be considered as compensation? When Sword Emperor learned from Jintian Xianyue about the compensation proposed by Lin Sun, he couldn't help but feel surprised. Jintian Xianyue's eyebrows showed a touch of sadness and she said, Ancestor, does Yu Xian really look down on me? Sword Emperor sighed in his heart. Originally, according to his idea, if he could let Jintian Xianyue follow Lin Sun to cultivate, it would be a good opportunity to make friends with Lin Sun. After all, Lin Sun had a senior brother in the Emperor realm, whose realm was unfathomable. How powerful was the sect behind him? If Jintian Xianyue could take this opportunity to get Yu Xian's approval, she might get some unexpected good fortune. Who would have thought Yu Xian refused? Xianyue, do you still remember that I took the initiative to admit defeat a few days ago? Taking a deep breath, Sword Emperor Fufeng looked at the junior in front of him, whom he admired the most, and said, This is just a setback on the path of cultivation. Don't be discouraged. Yu Xian may have his own ideas, but your path must not be disturbed because of this. Jintian Xianyue's body trembled, and she said, Thank you for your advice, ancestor. Go. Sword Emperor Fufeng watched her leave, and he couldn't help but frown. In the primordial world, there were 6 Dao courts, 10 war clans, and many primordial imperial clans. It was regarded as the most prosperous, dazzling, and ancient world among the worlds of the primordial ancient path heavens. The Dayan Pure Land was also an ancient force in the primordial world. But relatively speaking, this force was quite mysterious, and its descendants rarely appeared in the world. As far as Sword Emperor Fufeng knew, the most famous person in the Dayan Pure Land was the Zither Emperor Xiaoxiang, who proved his Tao with music in the primordial era. His zither music was the best in the starry sky, and it could kill demons and gods. It made people pale at the mention of it. It's not easy to join this sect. Sword Emperor Fufeng sighed. Sword Monarch Fufeng sighed softly. Although their Jintian clan was powerful and famous in the universe, they had no connection with the Pure Land of Dayan. Oh right, how could I forget about him? If he takes action, he can definitely do it. Suddenly, Sword Emperor Fufeng thought of a person, and that person was on this boat. In the courtyard, the old lady looked at Sword Emperor Fufeng, who came to visit, and said indifferently, I didn't expect that in order to compensate that kid, you, an Emperor Realm cultivator, would lower yourself to beg me. Sword Emperor Fufeng smiled bitterly and said, I hope you can help me. The old lady pondered. If my Xian clan steps in, we can indeed make the Dayan Pure Land accept that little girl. However, my young master has always been interested in your Jintian clan's chaotic sword supporting scripture. I wonder if you can let my young master take a look? Sword Emperor Fufeng's lips twitched. The chaotic sword supporting scripture was their clan's inheritance. How could they let someone read it? This old lady was obviously asking for too much. Fellow Taoist, aren't you making things difficult for me? Sword Emperor Fufeng smiled bitterly. The young man in linen who had been listening at the side couldn't help but say, I don't want the chaotic sword supporting scripture either. I just want to see the power of this sword scripture. Sword Emperor Fufeng thought for a while and said, That's fine. The old lady felt helpless. This brat is really stupid. Can't he see that I'm doing him a favor? The young man in linen smiled and said in his heart, Of course I know to take advantage of the situation. I just want to do that brother a favor. And Sword Emperor Fufeng will definitely owe me a favor. It's killing two birds with one stone. On that day, Lin Sun got a token with the word Xian engraved on it. He also learned that with this token, Lu Qingyan could easily enter the Dayan Pure Land to cultivate. This Xian Juin's origin isn't simple. Lin Sun stroked his chin. Even Sword Emperor Fufeng couldn't do it, but this guy could do it with a token. It could be seen how extraordinary the Xian clan was. Lin Sun recalled that she, the mysterious woman in the heaven accessing place, once said that a peerless swordsman named Xian Shangchen entered the heaven accessing place in primitive times. This person was also the only one who passed through the 9 levels of Green Cloud Path and opened the heaven accessing door a little bit. She once said that before Lin Sun entered the heaven accessing place, Xian Shangchen's talent and amazing foundation could be ranked first among all the challengers she had seen. Moreover, she once urged Lin Sun to remember the surname, Xian, because it was too extraordinary. It was mysterious and the door of all wonders. This surname wasn't something any clan could have. This Xian Juin is probably the descendant of Xian Shangchen. Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly had an impulse to meet Xian Juin. Xian Shangchen had entered the heaven accessing place before. The existence of the heaven accessing place was related to his mother Luo Qingxuan, Lu Boya, and Luo Tongtian, the master of the heaven accessing place. As one of the challengers, Xian Shangchen must have known something about the heaven accessing place. But in the end, Lin Sun still resisted this impulse. His current identity couldn't be exposed, and Xian Juin might not know about the heaven accessing place. If there's a chance in the future, I must inquire about it. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. As time went by, the boat shuttled through the Zhou starry sky without any disturbance. Unknowingly, another 2 months had passed. Boom! On this day, in the courtyard, Lin Sun's body roared, and a thick and boundless khaki divine brilliance emerged. In the spleen palace, the yellow fetus produced a violent vibration, like the beating of a divine drum, and the thick and substantial vitality was boiling and roaring. Finally, with a dull sound, above Lin Sun's head, the misty khaki light rain converged and turned into a yellow figure, exuding a vast, heavy, and immovable feeling from head to toe. Looking carefully, this Dharmakaya had handsome and elegant facial features, exactly the same as Lin Sun's appearance. Yellow Taoist body. Earth was one of the 5 elements. It represented the earth, and a gentleman was virtuous. This was a great Tao doppelganger born from the yellow fetus, showing a lofty, vast, and boundless charm. With the experience of condensing the Greenwood Taoist body, Lin Sun was already familiar with condensing the yellow Taoist body. Boom! His essence, qi, spirit, and cultivation all gushed out and integrated into the yellow Taoist body. Chapter 1933. After comprehending for a long time, Lin Sun suddenly stretched out his hand and gently grasped in the void. Buzz! The thick and vast earth's spiritual energy emitted a dim yellow luster, condensed in the void, and finally turned into an obscure and turbid grain of sand. It was as small as a sesame seed, but it gave people the feeling that it was the source of all things, emitting an amazing majestic aura. Lin Sun flicked his fingers, and the grain of sand suddenly turned into a towering mountain, and then into a floating land. Finally, the grain of sand turned into an illusory world, vast and heavy, filled with a vigorous and boundless aura. A grain of sand sees a world, and all living beings are born in it. Lin Sun's heart moved, and he integrated the wish of all living beings he had mastered into this grain of sand. Suddenly, a magical scene appeared. The world formed by the sand actually showed the appearance of all living beings. All living beings resided within it, and it was a vast and magnificent sight. If the previous world of sand was too illusory, then the world of sand in front of him was like a real existence. And Lin Sun, like the Creator, had a panoramic view of all the mysteries of this world. He had the momentum of overlooking the world and watching all living beings. Boom! Finally, the world of sand turned into a primitive and vast khaki seal with Lin Sun's mind. It floated in the void, showing the appearance of all living beings. This was the seal of all living beings, recorded in the Great Way Yellow Court scripture. It was condensed by the talent power controlled by the yellow Taoist body. Ninth Senior Brother actually fused the will of all living beings into the yellow earth Taoist physique's divine ability. This method can be said to turn something rotten into something magical. Lin Sun's eyes were bright. He stared at the seal of all living beings floating in front of him, and a touch of shock surged in his heart. The magic of this seal was incredible, and its power was far beyond imagination. When used against the enemy, it was like carrying the power of a world and the power of all living beings. Clatter! Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the seal of all living beings disappeared. The Greenwood Taoist body controls life and death, and the yellow Taoist body controls the seal of all living beings, which is equivalent to me mastering two more wonderful fighting methods. Lin Sun pondered. When I reach the primordial world in the future, I can completely change my identity and walk the world with the yellow earth Tao body. At that time, who would guess that I'm Lin Sun? Who would know that I was once Yu Xian? Lin even thought that when he condensed the red flame Taoist body, the platinum Taoist body, and the black water Taoist body, he would have 3 more opportunities to change his identity at any time. In this way, who in the primordial world would know that I am me? Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and he felt relaxed. Right now, Yu Xian's identity was too eye-catching. However, it didn't matter. He could change it at any time in the future. Moreover, even Emperor Realm cultivators wouldn't be able to see through it. After all, every single Tao physique had its own aura and charm, and it wasn't something that a simple disguise could compare to. On this day, after 2 months of hard work, Lin successfully condensed the yellow Tao body. Moreover, his cultivation had also improved again, and he was now only a step away from breaking through to the peak Saint King Realm Intermediate. It was also on this day that the support ship arrived at the Bright Monarch Planetary Domain, one of the 9 great planetary domains that was closest to the central planetary domain. Buddhist Earth World. It was one of the most prosperous worlds in the Bright Monarch Planetary Domain. It was as famous as the Golden Sky World in the White Emperor World. When they arrived, Elder Liang Chuan and the others of the Heavenly Sound Parlor became extremely nervous and felt great pressure. The reason was that the Buddhist Earth world was the territory of the imperial Kong family. It should be noted that Kong Yu, the successor of the primitive Taoist court, was a pure-blood descendant of the imperial Kong family. Liang Chuan didn't want to enter the Bright Monarch planetary domain unless he had no other choice. If he wanted to reach the central planetary domain via the Starry Sea route they were traveling, he had to pass through the Bright Monarch planetary domain. If he chose to detour around this planetary domain, it would take at least 3 years to get close to the central planetary domain. Who on the support ship could afford to wait for 3 years? Moreover, the Heavenly Sound Parlor couldn't afford it. It should be noted that the support ship consumed a large number of Taoist gems every day to fly across the starry sky. This time, the situation is special. We can't stay in the Buddhist Earth world. Keep going. In the end, Liang Chuan gritted his teeth and made a decision. According to the original plan, the support ship was to stay in the Buddhist Earth world for 3 days. But under the current circumstances, how could he dare to do so? If the Imperial Kong family came looking for him, everything would be over. Liang Chuan's decision was unanimously approved by the Heavenly Sound Parlor. Liang Chuan had also mentioned this matter to Lin Sun in advance so that he could make preparations. After all, the Imperial Kong family was the #1 power in the Bright Monarch planetary domain. If anything happened, Lin Sun, who had killed a group of successors of the primitive Taoist court, would definitely be targeted immediately. Lin Sun didn't say anything about this. After all, the Imperial Kong family was not the primitive Taoist court. The two were different. At the same time, after learning that the support ship wouldn't stop at the Buddhist Earth world, someone was the first to panic. It was Kong Lin, a descendant of the Imperial Kong family. Several months ago, on the night Lin Sun killed the primitive Taoist court cultivators, Kong Lin had stormed into the main hall of the Heavenly Sound Parlor in a rage. He had almost pointed at Hua Dian's nose and scolded him. In the end, Hua Dian and the other big shots of the Heavenly Sound Parlor could only pinch their noses and accept it. The reason was that Kong Lin was Kong Yu's closest attendant. His status and identity were incomparable to others. However, during this period of time, Kong Lin had kept a low profile. He had long sensed that the atmosphere on the support ship wasn't right. Even though he knew that the killer of the primitive Taoist court cultivators was Yu Xian, he could only bear with it and didn't dare to make a sound. Firstly, he was afraid of Sword Emperor Fufeng. Secondly, he was worried that if he angered Yu Xian, he would be killed. Originally, Kong Lin had planned to contact the cultivators of the Imperial Kong family after arriving at the Buddhist Earth world and attack the support ship to settle scores with Yu Xian. Unexpectedly, Liang Chuan had ordered that the support ship wasn't allowed to stay in the Buddhist Earth world. Has the Heavenly Sound Parlor gone mad? Stop the ship. Kong Lin was flustered and exasperated. His face was dark and his eyes were about to pop out of their socket. He couldn't care about anything else and rushed into the meeting hall of the Heavenly Sound Parlor. Liang Chuan was expressionless. "I'm sorry. This is a special situation. I can't comply." Kong Lin trembled with anger. He pointed at Liang Chuan. "Old thing, I can understand that you don't dare to offend Yu Xian. But do you really plan to offend the Imperial Kong family and the primitive Taoist court because of Yu Xian?" His voice was full of threats. The expressions of many important figures of the Heavenly Sound Parlor in the hall changed. This feeling of surviving in the cracks made them feel aggrieved and helpless. They indeed didn't dare to offend Yu Xian. But how could they dare to offend the Imperial Kong family and the primitive Taoist court? For a moment, everyone's eyes were on Liang Chuan. Liang Chuan's expression darkened. He scolded sternly, "Humph, you're just an errand boy for young Master Kong Yu. What right do you have to represent the Imperial Kong family? And who gave you the courage to represent the primitive Taoist court?" His voice was like thunder, reverberating through the hall. Kong Lin was stunned. He said angrily, "Old thing, you boom? Suddenly, the support ship shook violently. Following that, many cultivators on the ship were alarmed. The expressions of Liang Chuan and the others changed slightly. Traveling on the ancient starry sky path, they were most worried about encountering natural or man-made disasters. Let's go and take a look. A group of people rushed out of the hall. In next to no time, they saw a multicolored treasured vessel that was shaped like a peacock obstructing their path. On the multicolored treasured vessel hung a flag that had the character Kong drawn on it, and it was fluttering in the wind. The multicolored treasure ship of the Imperial Kong family. Someone exclaimed. Liang Chuan and the others' hearts sank as if they had been struck by lightning. What they didn't want to see the most was about to happen, the multicolored treasure ship. Haha, it seems that the Imperial Kong family has come with ill intentions. On the wall of the courtyard, the youth in linen watched this scene with a smile. The Imperial Kong family, in front of another courtyard, Sword Emperor Fufeng, dressed in a cloth robe, frowned slightly and fell into thought. Senior, is it really the Imperial Kong family? Lu Qingyan's pretty face was slightly pale. Stay here and don't move. I'll go and have a look. As Lin Sun spoke, his figure disappeared into thin air. The appearance of the Imperial Kong family's multicolored treasure ship forced the support ship to stop. Then, a group of people rushed out of the multicolored treasure ship and rushed onto the support ship. In the lead was a young man dressed in a colorful robe and wearing a bright crown. His face was as beautiful as jade, and his steps were majestic and extraordinary. Following behind him was a white-robed middle-aged man and a green-robed old man. Each of them exuded a terrifying and frightening power. These were two quasi-emperor existences. In this way, the multicolored youth's identity was even more extraordinary. The originally restless and noisy support ship became silent at this moment. Everyone's face was written with surprise and fear. And when Liang Chuan and the others saw the multicolored youth, their vision darkened, and their hearts twitched uncontrollably. Kong Yu. No one thought that the dazzling figure of the Imperial Kong family's younger generation, a famous successor of the primitive Dao court, would not appear in the Hong Meng Great World, but here. For a moment, Liang Chuan and the others were stunned, completely caught off guard. Young master! Amidst the silence, a mournful cry rang out. Kong Lin looked like he was about to go crazy. He rushed over, tears almost flowing out of his eyes. What's going on? Kong Yu suddenly frowned. The reason why he waited here was that he wanted to capture Lu Qingyan and vent his anger. When Lu Qingyan refused him, he was quite ashamed and angry, and had long borne a grudge. Otherwise, with his identity, he would not have waited here in advance. Young master, these guys from the Heavenly Sound Pavilion have gone too far. Not only did they watch the primitive Dao court experts around you being killed, but they also shielded and connived at the murderer. If you hadn't appeared in time, they wouldn't have let me go. Kong Lin's expression was warped as he gnashed his teeth, and his words were filled with surging resentment. Chapter 1934. The boat was silent and everyone wore different expressions. The passengers on the boat knew that Yu Xian was the one who had killed those primitive Dao court experts. But now, Yu Xian was treated as an honored guest by the Heavenly Music Pavilion. Kong Lin was right to say that the Heavenly Music Pavilion had protected and connived with Yu Xian. Now that the Imperial Kong family had arrived, and the nearby starry sky belonged to the Clear King Starfield, they were in the territory of the Imperial Kong family. Yu Xian was going to be in trouble. Haha, very good. Kong Yu smiled, but it was an exceptionally cold smile. Everyone could see that he was enraged. Liang Chuan took a deep breath and said, Young Master Kong Yu, there is more to this matter than you think. Why don't you come to the main hall of the Heavenly Music Pavilion and allow me to explain? Forget it, Kong Yu said coldly. Kong Yu's voice was cold. No wonder the boat didn't stop at the Brahma Earth world. If I hadn't caught up with you, I'm afraid you would have deceived us. Liang Chuan and the others trembled, feeling bitter and helpless. Haha, the tiny heavenly music pavilion is helping others to bully our Kong family. Are you all tired of living? Behind Kong Yu, the white-robed middle-aged man smiled coldly. Young master, just say the word and I will help you kill these bastards, the green-robed elder said expressionlessly. The green-robed old man spoke with an emotionless expression. Just a single sentence of his was covered in killing intent, and it caused all the spectating cultivators on the boat to feel suffocated while their expressions changed abruptly. Young Master Kong Yu, we swear to the heavens that we have no intention of bullying the Kong family. Liang Chuan hurriedly explained. He was a dignified quasi-emperor, but now he was bowing his head and showing weakness, looking helpless and anxious. Many people sighed inwardly. So what if he was the highest elder of the heavenly music pavilion? In front of the imperial Kong family, he was too weak. Kong Yu said coldly, "Where is that bitch Lu Qinyan?" Kong Lin hurriedly said, "She is on the boat, under Yu Xian's protection. If not, I would have captured that bitch long ago." Slap. Kong Yu slapped Kong Lin's face, his eyes cold. "How dare you call her a bitch?" Kong Lin was dumbfounded. He covered his swollen face and kept quiet. Kong Yu cast his gaze at Liang Chuan and the others. His voice was cold and callous. "Go kill Yu Xian and bring the bitch Lu Qinyan here. I can give your heavenly music pavilion a chance to explain. Remember, it's a chance to explain. Whether you can save your lives depends on your next performance." His words revealed an inviolable feeling, and it caused the expressions of Liang Chuan and the others to go pale. Kill Yu Xian? How would they dare? Liang Chuan couldn't help but recall that day, the scene of the man that seemed like a farmer used the might of 3 punches to suppress Monk Dukong. He also thought back to the scene where Sword Emperor Fufeng, an old antique of the Jintian clan, could only lower his head. But these Liang Chuan did not dare to utter a single word. The seed of the locking heart herb of the netherworld had already been planted in his heart. If he dared to utter a single word, his heart would immediately crumble and he would die. Senior Uncle Liang Chuan, the important figures of the heavenly music pavilion all looked at Liang Chuan with fear and pleading. Liang Chuan's expression kept changing. Since he'd started cultivating until now, this was the first time he'd felt such torment, struggle, and helplessness. An ant that survived in the crevice was nothing more than this. His expression was bleak, and his lips trembled a few times before he finally let out a long sigh. "Child Kong Yu, please forgive me for not being able to comply." These 8 words seemed to have exhausted all of his strength, and they were filled with endless desolation. The crowd watching from afar was filled with sorrow when they saw this. Even someone as powerful as Liang Chuan, a quasi-emperor, was forced to such a state. Who wouldn't be moved? Lin Sun, who had witnessed this scene from afar, finally made a decision. Liang Chuan could have pushed everything onto him, but he didn't do so. Even when he was threatened by the Imperial Kong clan, he still chose to refuse in the end. This alone was enough to gain Lin Sun's approval. He quietly walked forward. At this moment, Kong Lin's eyes widened in disbelief. "Old thing, how dare you not know what's good for you?" Kong Yu's face darkened and he laughed angrily. "For the sake of Yu Xian, the heavenly music pavilion is willing to sacrifice its life. Good, very good." In the end, he could no longer suppress the anger and killing intent in his heart. "Today, no one from the heavenly music pavilion will leave alive. Young master, leave it to us." The white-robed middle-aged man smiled and walked forward with the green-robed elder. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone found it difficult to breathe. Liang Chuan and the other important figures of the heavenly music pavilion all looked gloomy. In the end, they were still inevitably implicated. But what could they do? They couldn't afford to offend the primitive Dao court, they couldn't afford to offend the imperial Jintian clan, they couldn't afford to offend Yu Xian. From the beginning to the end, they could only bear with it and lower their heads. But in the end they still couldn't escape this calamity. Boom! the white-robed middle-aged man and the green-robed elder suddenly moved, teleporting through the air and directly pouncing toward Liang Chuan. Their quasi-emperor cultivation was on full display at this moment. To capture the bandits, one had to capture the leader first. Once Liang Chuan was dead, the rest would be useless. Liang Chuan naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. And Lin Sun, who had blended into the crowd, was also ready to attack. But at this moment, a thin figure suddenly appeared and waved his sleeve. Bang! Bang! Accompanied by two dull thuds, the white-robed middle-aged man and the green-robed elder were suppressed by a formless and terrifying force and smashed to the ground. Who? The white-robed middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. Imperial realm. The green-robed elder let out a low roar, his voice filled with shock and anger. The people who were watching the battle from afar also shuddered and their minds went blank. Two quasi-emperors of the imperial clan of the Kong clan had been so easily suppressed? Everything happened too quickly and caught everyone off guard. But when they saw the appearance of the person who had helped them, they immediately reacted. Liang Chuan and the others were originally prepared to fight to the death, but at this moment they were also stunned for a moment before they all revealed looks of ecstasy. Because they clearly saw the person who had helped them, the anxiety and fear in their hearts were swept away at this moment. Lin Sun, who had originally planned to help, was also stunned and felt very surprised. Because the person who had helped them was dressed in a cloth robe and had a thin face. It was the Fufeng Sword Emperor. One should know that this matter had nothing to do with him at all. He could completely play the role of a passerby and watch coldly from the sidelines. Moreover, this was the territory of the imperial clan of the Kong clan after all. Anyone who wanted to go against them would probably have to weigh the consequences and weigh the pros and cons. But the Fufeng Sword Emperor still made a move unexpectedly. This was something that no one had expected. What a disappointment. He actually beat me to it. Looks like this favor is really not easy to give. No one noticed that the linen-clothed young man from the Xian clan muttered to himself at this moment. No one noticed that before the Fufeng Sword Emperor made a move, an old woman stood silently outside the courtyard of the guest mountain. When she saw the Fufeng Sword Emperor appear, the corners of the old woman's mouth twitched imperceptibly. She seemed to be slightly annoyed that he had beaten her to it. At this moment, Kong Yu was stunned as well. An Imperial Realm expert. Even if he racked his brains, he would never have imagined that there would actually be such a supreme existence on this boat. As for the experts of the Imperial clan of the Kong clan that had followed him here, they were all dumbfounded. An Imperial Realm expert was simply like a god in the heavens. Even if they were from a primeval clan like the Kong clan, they didn't have the slightest confidence in their hearts. We're descendants of the Imperial clan of the Kong clan. We didn't know that Senior was here earlier. If we've offended you in any way, I hope that Senior can show mercy. On the ground, the white-robed middle-aged man was drenched in sweat as he spoke with a trembling voice. Earlier, he was arrogant, conceited, and looked down on everyone. Yet at this moment, he was suppressed on the ground with the green-robed old man and shivered. This was the might of the Imperial Realm. Even if Fufeng Sword Emperor had once lowered his head before the farmer, he was a true Imperial Realm expert after all, an extraordinary existence that was capable of causing others to tremble and look up to him. I've said it before. On this boat, anyone that goes against little friend Yu Xian is going against my Jintian clan. Fufeng Sword Emperor spoke indifferently, and his words were like a thunderclap that shook Kong Yu and the others to the point they were dazed. The Imperial clan of the Jintian clan. This was a colossus that wasn't inferior to their Kong clan in the slightest. Moreover, they hadn't expected that the Jintian clan would actually openly support Yu Xian. At this moment, Kong Yu even had the intention to kill Kong Lin. This bastard actually didn't leak any information about such an important piece of information. But in the end, he restrained himself and took a deep breath before he said, Junior Kong, you didn't know that Yu Xian was someone Senior is protecting. I hope Senior can forgive me." As he spoke, he bowed and lowered his head. All the cultivators that witnessed this scene were shocked. This is the Imperial Realm. The Grand Tao is a realm that even someone as noble as Kong Yu has to lower his head. Sword Emperor Fufeng's voice was cold and indifferent. A junior actually dares to act in such an arrogant and domineering manner. Believe it or not, even if I kill you right now, the seniors of your clan wouldn't shed all pretenses with me because of this, right? Kong Yu's body shivered, and the clothes on his back were drenched in cold sweat. How could he dare not believe it? In the younger generation of the Imperial clan, there were many descendants like him. Even if he, Kong Yu, died, would the great figures of the Imperial clan shed all pretenses with an Imperial realm expert of the Jintian clan? It's impossible. Kong Yu took a deep breath and said, "Senior, the reason Junior acted in this way is because Yu Xian killed some disciples of the primitive Tao court." Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted coldly by Sword Emperor Fufeng. "Young man, are you trying to scare me with the primitive Tao court?" Bang! His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when Kong Yu's body was suddenly pressed down by a terrifying force, and he knelt on the ground in an extremely sorry and humiliated state. "Junior doesn't dare, Senior, please spare me." Kong Yu kowtowed while his soul almost left his body, and he was utterly terrified as he realized that he'd made a huge mistake. In the eyes of a figure like Sword Emperor Fufeng, how could he possibly care about the threat of a junior like him? At this moment, all the spectators in the distance couldn't help but gasp. No one had imagined that Sword Emperor Fufeng would actually protect Yu Xian like this, and it was even to the extent that he didn't care about Kong Yu and the other experts of the Imperial clan. Chapter 1935. "Senior, please spare my life." On the ground, Kong Yu was still kowtowing, banging his head on the ground. His heart was already drowned in fear. An Emperor Realm cultivator might not be able to make him too afraid, but if it was an Emperor Realm cultivator from the Jintian clan, then it was completely different. "Senior, please spare my life." The other experts of the Kong clan who came with Kong Yu all knelt on the ground in fear, begging for mercy in a trembling voice. There was dead silence on the huge support boat. Liang Chuan and the others felt very complicated. Their heavenly music pavilion also had an Emperor Realm cultivator, but it was obvious that they couldn't be compared with Sword Emperor Fufeng. If it wasn't for that, how could a mere Kong Yu possibly force them to such an extent? "Young friend, you only need to say the word, whether these people live or die." At this moment, Sword Emperor Fufeng looked at Lin Sun in the crowd, and his voice became much gentler. Only then did people notice that Yu Xian, who had caused endless waves on the support boat during this period of time, was actually at the scene. For a moment everyone looked over. After a short silence, Lin Sun said, "It's all up to you, Senior." Sword Emperor Fufeng nodded. "You guys attacked without permission, so you can't be forgiven." He looked at the white-robed middle-aged man and the green-robed old man who were suppressed on the ground, and these two quasi-emperors were scared out of their wits. They couldn't care about anything else and begged for mercy. But at this moment, Sword Emperor Fufeng was already too lazy to talk nonsense, and he waved his sleeve. Rumble! A terrifying Emperor Realm power spread out. The white-robed middle-aged man and the green-robed old man didn't have time to resist, and their bodies turned into ashes, their souls destroyed. A series of gasps sounded. For most of the cultivators present, a quasi-emperor was already in existence that they could only look up to, but in front of an Emperor Realm, a quasi-emperor was completely reduced to a role that could be turned into ashes with a flick of a finger. This was the gap between them, and there was always a higher mountain. "Get lost." Sword Emperor Fufeng glanced at Kong Yu and the others, and spat out a word. Kong Yu, who knelt on the ground, had his teeth chattering, and was already scared out of his wits. When he heard this, he immediately revealed a look of wild joy and gratitude. "Thank you, Senior, thank you, Senior." He kowtowed repeatedly before hurriedly crawling up from the ground, and then he charged dejectedly onto the 5-colored treasured vessel with the other experts of the Imperial clan, and he was in a state of panic like a stray dog. All the cultivators that witnessed this scene were shocked speechless. Liang Chuan and the others who were lucky enough to escape from death had dazed expressions on their faces as if they were dreaming. This sudden storm came to an end. Not long after, the boat continued its journey through the starry sky. On the 5-colored treasure ship, it wasn't until he had fled far away that Kong Yu gradually recovered from his panic and despair, and his expression became extremely unsightly. Kong Lin, I need an explanation. Kong Yu's voice seemed as if it was squeezed out from the cracks between his teeth, and it revealed boundless hatred. At this moment, Kong Lin was kneeling weakly on the ground. When he heard this, he wailed, "Young master, I really didn't expect that Sword Emperor Fufeng would actually get involved in such a matter. Logically speaking, even a martial emperor would have some reservations when facing our imperial clans, the Kong clan, and the Antiquity Dao court. They would be worried that they would bring trouble upon themselves." Logically speaking? Kong Yu was angered to the point his eyes had turned red, and every single strand of his hair stood on end. Don't you fucking know that there isn't a single martial emperor on this ancient path that's reasonable? Bang! He kicked fiercely, causing Kong Lin's entire body to be blasted flying before smashing fiercely onto the wall of the hall, and he let out a muffled groan of pain. At this moment, Kong Yu's belly full of rage and hatred seemed as if it had been completely lit ablaze, and he charged over madly and bashed Kong Lin violently. Do you know that you almost caused my death this time? I've never fucking seen an idiot like you. In the end, accompanied by a muffled bang, Kong Lin was beaten to death, and his body exploded apart into a mangled mess. Kong Yu's expression was livid and savage, and he still seemed as if he hadn't vented his anger as he spat fiercely and cursed. Trash. All of you are fucking trash. This setback was too great of a blow to him. Young master, do you want to return to the clan to seek help? An old servant appeared soundlessly. No. Kong Yu refused without the slightest hesitation, and his expression was gloomy. Believe it or not, after I've suffered such a great humiliation, I'll only be laughed at by others when I return to the clan? The old servant was silent. Kong Yu took a deep breath and said in a cold voice, Sword Emperor Fufeng is right. Even if I die this time, it's impossible for the clan to shed all pretenses with Sword Emperor Fufeng because of me. He felt depressed, resentful, and helpless in his heart. At the end of the day, Sword Emperor Windraiser was too powerful. Let's go to Hong Meng World. Kong Yu made a decision and gnashed his teeth. I can't do anything to Sword Emperor Fufeng, and I don't dare to provoke Yu Xian. But this guy killed the people of Primitive Dao Court after all. I don't believe that Primitive Dao Court will remain indifferent. The old servant nodded silently. At the same time, on the rocking boat. Thanks to Senior's help this time. In front of the courtyard there was a waterfall, a flowing spring, and green pines and cypresses. Lin Sun and Sword Emperor Fufeng sat opposite each other before a stone table, and they were drinking tea and chatting. Sword Emperor Fufeng smiled and said, It's nothing. Believe it or not, after Kong Yu returns, he won't even dare to mention this matter to his clansmen. Lin Sun raised his brows and said in surprise, Why is that? Sword Emperor Fufeng smiled and explained, Ancient imperial clans like Kong clan don't lack young people like Kong Yu. If Kong clan knows that Kong Yu has angered me, they'll punish him instead. It's not that they don't dare to offend me, but they're unwilling to offend me because of a small character. Small character, Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his heart. Kong Yu was a peak saint king, but in Sword Emperor Fufeng's mouth, he became a small character that wasn't worth mentioning. I won't kill this kid because he's not only a descendant of Kong clan, but also a true disciple of Primitive Dao Court. Sword Emperor Fufeng said, Among the 6 great courts, only Primitive Dao Court is the most protective. If Kong Yu dies, primitive Dao court won't dare to do anything to me, but they'll hate you because of this. Lin Sun shook his head. I've already killed so many people from primitive Dao court. The hatred has long been sown, and I don't care about this. Sword Emperor Fufeng was speechless, and he said, "Looks like I made an unnecessary move." The two of them chatted for a while, and before Sword Emperor Fufeng left, he suddenly said, "Little friend, can you give me face and let Xian Yu follow by your side to cultivate for a period of time?" Lin Sun thought in his heart. As expected, the real reason Sword Emperor Fufeng made a move this time was probably because of this. Moreover, he had to acknowledge this favor. For a moment, he was slightly helpless, and he said, "Senior, may I be so bold to ask why you're doing this?" Sword Emperor Fufeng thought for a while and answered seriously, "It's very simple. In order to find opportunities for Xian Yu, she doesn't lack cultivation methods or cultivation resources. What she lacks is tempering herself in the vicissitudes of the world, and seeking the real transformation of her state of mind and cultivation path." Lin Sun pondered for a while and said, "But it'll only be more dangerous if she follows me. If something happens to her," Sword Emperor Fufeng smiled, "then she'll be unlucky. Jintian clan won't blame you for this." Speaking of this, he mocked himself in his heart. How could they blame such a young man? Lin Sun said, "I can promise you, but the premise is that no matter what you do in the future, you must listen to my arrangements." Sword Emperor Fufeng didn't hesitate and agreed readily. "Xian Yu, I can tell you the truth. I'm doing this because I'm gambling. I'm gambling that with your aptitude and talent, you're destined to rise strongly if you follow Yu Xian in the future. It's also very possible for you to seek the opportunity to become an emperor." When Sword Emperor Fufeng returned, he immediately talked to Jintian Xian Yu with a serious look. Jintian Xian Yu was stunned. Her star-like eyes were filled with confusion. "Old ancestor, why do you think so highly of this person?" Sword Emperor Fufeng's eyes were filled with divine light. "You'll understand in the future. If you believe in me, then follow this person." Jintian Xian Yu kept silent for a long time and finally agreed. Sword Emperor Fufeng felt pity for her. "Girl, if you feel wronged, I won't force you. I won't force you." Jintian Xian Yu took a deep breath and raised her beautiful face. Her star-like eyes were filled with determination. "Old ancestor, I know you're doing this for my own good." Sword Emperor Fufeng felt gratified. Jintian clan, an imperial clan, had survived until now. It was known as the far ancient imperial clan. But only Sword Emperor Fufeng knew that the current situation of the clan was getting worse with each generation. Fortunately, Sword Emperor Fufeng saw a possibility in Jintian Xian Yu. A possibility that he could reproduce the might of the primordial White Emperor. "If I want to reach the peak of martial emperor realm, I naturally have to take a different path. I'm not far from the change in the next 100,000 years. Sword Emperor Fufeng's eyes were deep. According to the prediction made by the Black-Yellow Dao Court, in less than 1,000 years, the ancient path of the starry sky was destined to undergo a huge change. Change meant breaking the old and establishing the new. Whoever could grasp the opportunity might be able to reign supreme in the next 100,000 years. The end of the primordial era, the rise of the ancient era. The end of the primordial era, the prosperity of the current era. If the present era were to end, who would dominate the next 100,000 years of the great era? Granny, what does this Sword Emperor Fufeng want to do? In another courtyard, the youth in linen clothes was puzzled. He should have noticed something from Yu Xian's identity. The old woman said casually, "Sai, I originally intended to push the boat with the current and do that brother a favor. Who knew that Sword Emperor Fufeng would be one step ahead of me?" The youth in linen clothes sighed lightly. The old woman said, "Young master, you don't have to be like this. This Yu Xian's identity is bound to not be simple. It's hard to say if making friends with him will be a blessing or a curse. In my opinion, Sword Emperor Fufeng is gambling. He wants to obtain a fortune from Yu Xian for that young lady called Jin Tian Xianyu. Gambling? The youth in linen clothes pondered carefully for a moment, and then he said with a cheeky smile, "Granny, why don't we gamble as well? For example, asking me to be that brother's Tao attendant?" My path of subduing heart might have been resolved right beside him. The old woman instantly stood up and became nervous. P.S. 10 years of hard work without anyone asking about it. Overnight fame is known throughout the world. Chapter 1936. No. The old woman refused flatly. What a joke. How could the direct descendant of Xian family be a servant of others? If it was spread out, she would be laughed at by all the gods and Buddhas. The young man in linen sighed with bitterness in his eyes. He couldn't do this and he couldn't do that. It seemed that he could only walk the road of surrender by himself. Thinking of this, he suddenly envied Lin Sun. Lin Sun had such a fierce senior fellow apprentice, but he still pursued the road of cultivation by himself. No one could control him. Looking at himself, the young man in linen sighed again in his heart. He also knew that all this was just because his surname was Xian. Xian was mysterious and mysterious. The news that Jin Tian Xianyu successfully became a servant of Yu Xian under the instruction of Wind Sword Emperor was not concealed, which caused a great sensation. Everyone sighed with emotion. When Jin Tian Xianyu decided to be a servant of Yu Xian for the first time, it was already shocking. And Yu Xian's refusal was even more shocking. Who would have thought that after many twists and turns, Jin Tian Xianyu still became a servant of Yu Xian? Yu Xian is really arrogant. If Wind Sword Emperor hadn't come forward to help him drive away the overlords of the Kong family, I'm afraid he wouldn't have agreed to this. Some people sighed. Damn it, Fairy Xianyu is so noble. Why does she have to condescend like this? Many people felt unbalanced in their hearts. While the outside world was talking about it, Lin Sun was studying the scripture of herbs in the heavens. This scripture, compiled by 11th senior fellow apprentice Pu Zhen, was extensive and profound. The more Lin Sun studied it, the more he felt that he benefited. Although the contents were all related to the spiritual objects in the heavens, everything was born and nurtured by the Tao. When one studied this scripture, one would be able to understand the mysteries of the great Tao imprinted in everything in the heavens and the earth. When one studied this scripture, a single leaf reveals the fall of autumn, and a small clue reveals the general situation. The great Tao is simple, and it is hidden among the myriad phenomena, all things in the world. Senior Brother Pu Zhen's Tao is indeed a magnificent path of the great Tao. Lin Sun was sighing with emotion. A cold and pleasant voice sounded, "Master, please have some tea." Jin Tianxian stood in front of him with a teacup in her hand. She wore a plain white dress and her black hair was coiled into a bun, revealing her exquisite face. Her figure was extremely tall, her waist was slender, her breasts were tall, and her skin was smooth and white like mutton fat. Especially her eyes, they were brighter and clearer than the stars in the sky, making her seem like a goddess from the 9 heavens. This was also the reason why Jin Tian Xianyu was called a fairy. On the entire ancient path of the starry sky, she was praised as a peerless beauty who had a graceful figure, celestial skin, jade bones, and a peerless beauty. But now, she was like a maid, serving tea and calling Lin Sun her master. If this scene was seen by those who admired and respected Jin Tian Xianyu, they would most likely be heartbroken. Lin rubbed his eyebrows and said, "Miss Xianyu, we are not master and servant. You don't have to do this in the future." Jin Tian Xianyu pursed her pink lips and lowered her head, saying, "Since I am a Taoist attendant, I should abide by the identity of a Taoist attendant." Lin Sun felt a headache. If those who admired Jin Tian Xianyu saw this scene when they arrived at the Hongmeng macro world, they would definitely kill him. What is a Taoist attendant? Following me is like serving the great Tao. Wind Sword Emperor has said that since you have chosen to stay with me, you should listen to my arrangement. From now on, you should not call me master anymore. Lin Sun said seriously. Jin Tianxianyue was relieved. She was so cautious before because she was not sure about Lin Sun's attitude. Now that Lin Sun had said it, she would not refuse. Please have some tea, child. Jin Tianxianyue's cold voice was much softer. Her slender fingers held a clear celadone teacup and handed it to Lin Sun. Although Lin Sun was not used to it, he still took it and tasted it. His eyes lit up. Good tea. Jin Tianxianyue smiled proudly and said, "This is the best spiritual tea of our Jintian clan, 9-star green bud. It is brewed with Feihong snow water from the Jintian macro world. It can show 9 unique fragrances, moist, clear, sweet, and mellow. This kind of spiritual tea can only be picked up about 1 kilogram every 1,000 years. It is impossible to buy it in the outside world." This was the heritage of the immemorial Emperor clan. Just drinking tea was so exquisite, which was beyond the imagination of ordinary cultivators. Lin Sun smiled and did not say anything. He remembered that this kind of spiritual tea was also recorded in the Scripture of Herbs. It was indeed a first-class treasure in the world. But at the same time, according to the records of 11th senior brother Pujin, there were even rarer spiritual teas in the world. One of them was called the Great Tao Tea Tree. This tree was born in the chaos. Every 3,000 years, it would condense a magical tea leaf branded with a complete Great Tao. If a cultivator could consume it, they could immediately comprehend and control a complete Great Tao. It could be said to be a stroke of luck. Miss Xianyue, have you been to the Hongmeng macro world? Lin Sun asked casually as he sipped the tea. Jin Tianxianyue nodded and said, "A few years ago, I was a guest of the Jiang clan in the Hongmeng macro world." The Jiang clan. Lin Sun was stunned, and a name naturally appeared in his mind. Jiang Xingqiu. Senior brother Xian Kong Ghost King had given him a hairpin and asked him to bring it to the Jiang clan and give it to Jiang Xingqiu. "Can you tell me about the Jiang clan?" Lin Sun's eyes were slightly strange. Although Jin Tianxianyue was a little strange, she still told him everything she knew. The Jiang clan was the immemorial Emperor clan where the immemorial Flame Emperor was from. White Emperor and Flame Emperor were 2 of the 5 great emperors of the immemorial era. Naturally, their relationship was not ordinary. The descendants of the immemorial Flame Emperor were surnamed Jiang. They called themselves the descendants of the Flame Emperor and occupied the Jiang River in the Hongmeng macro world. The Jiang River was regarded as one of the 8 great water systems in the Hongmeng macro world. It was a first-class blessed land. My Jintian clan and the Jiang clan are old friends, and the disciples of the 2 clans often interact with each other. However, in terms of strength, the Jiang clan is not as strong as it used to be. I heard that in the Tao battle of the ancient era, the Jiang clan suffered a great calamity and lost several emperor realm figures. When Jin Tianxianyue said this, Lin Sun was surprised. The Jiang clan actually participated in the Tao battle of the ancient era? Miss Xianyue, do you know Jiang Xingqiu? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Jin Tianxianyue frowned and said hesitantly, "I heard that this Jiang Xingqiu is a sinner of the Jiang clan. I don't know what mistake he made, but he was imprisoned a long time ago. Now, I don't know if he's dead or alive." Lin Sun was shocked. Sinner? How could the Jiang Xingqiu that senior brother Xian Kong knew become a sinner of the Jiang clan? Lin Sun instantly realized that if he went to the Jiang clan to find Jiang Xingqiu, it wouldn't be easy. Jin Tianxianyue said, "If young master wants to know more about this Jiang Xingqiu, I can ask the ancestor." Lin Sun thought for a while and shook his head. Senior brother Xian Kong was the successor of Fangtsuan Mountain like him. Jiang Xingqiu's sinner might be related to senior brother Xian Kong. If this kind of private matter attracted the attention of an Emperor Realm expert, who knew what they would think? Miss Xianyue, Do you know Jiang Heng? Lin Sun asked. Jin Tianxianhua was stunned and said, I know her. She's a descendant of the Jiang clan. It's said that she's very talented. Many years ago, she joined the Xuanji Dao sect to cultivate. Lin Sun thought to himself that it was indeed so. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun finally made a decision. When he arrived at the Hongmeng Great World, he would first go to the Xuanji Dao sect. The Xuanji Dao sect, where Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were. According to 13th senior brother Li Xianwei, the founder of the Xuanji Dao sect, Bo Yazi, was a registered disciple that he casually accepted back then. This was the reason why Lin Sun wanted to go to the Xuanji Dao sect. In the distance, looking at Lin Sun talking to Jin Tianxianhua, Lu Qingyan's watery eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. They were about to arrive at the Hongmeng Great World. Was he really that person? More than a month later, the Fuyao ship entered the central star field. This was already the center of the starry sky ancient path, the core of the starry sky world, and the holy land that countless cultivators yearned for the most. The reason was that the Hongmeng Great World was located in the central star field. After arriving at the central star field, the cultivators on the Fuyao ship became excited. For most of them, it was their first time crossing the vast starry sky to come to this legendary central star field. The central star field was extremely vast, and there were many big worlds spread out in it. But the most famous one was undoubtedly the Hongmeng Great World. This was a beautiful, prosperous, ancient, and vast world. There were 6 Dao courts that stood side by side, dominating the world. There were 10 major war clans that ruled the world. Countless clans and sects existed in this world. Any one of them might have an ancient heritage that was enough to make people stunned. Here, there were hundreds of millions of cultivators, including those in the King realm, the Longevity realm, the Sage, the Great Sage, and the Sage King. They could be seen everywhere. Even those in the Quasi-Emperor realm were not uncommon. It was no exaggeration to say that even those in the Emperor realm would restrain some of their arrogance and power when they arrived at the Hongmeng Great World. After all, the Hongmeng Great World was not short of Emperor realm figures. Since ancient times, there had been countless powerful figures who came out of the Hongmeng Great World and became famous in the starry sky. Half a month after the Fuyao ship arrived at the central star field, in the distance the outline of a big world could be seen. It was like a gigantic primordial chaos. It was boundlessly large, as if it had no boundaries. Rivers of stars stretched across the void and surrounded it like gorgeous waterfalls. They were dazzling and magnificent. The billowing chaos filled the air, covering it with a layer of yearning mysterious veil. Compared to it, the stars seemed so small and insignificant. Looking at it from afar, it gave people the feeling that the vast starry sky was completely covered by such a big world. It was shocking. This was the Hongmeng Great World. Chapter 1937. Great Mist World. On the boat, everyone stopped what they were doing, their eyes absent-minded, inwardly shaken. Big. Unimaginably big. Before it, the stars were as insignificant as specks of dust. Before it, the starry river was like a white jade belt hanging from its waist. Surging primal chaos aura pervaded the air, enveloping the great mist world in mysterious light. Outside the courtyard, Lin Sun was also silent, inwardly shaken. Back then, when he arrived at ancient Desolation Region's Imperial Pass, Lin Sun had been shaken, feeling an especially insignificant feeling. And now, compared to the Great Mist World, Imperial Pass Great Wall seemed too insignificant. Haha, another group of country bumpkins who haven't seen the world. A wave of laughter drifted over from the distance. Only now did Lin Sun notice that there were many realm ships shuttling back and forth in the nearby starry sky, densely packed. Every single realm ship was extremely large, as if they were floating continents. From the distance, it was a spectacular sight. That wave of laughter came precisely from a realm ship. That realm ship was like a giant sword that was several thousand zhang long, giving off a majestic and sharp feeling, as if it could pierce through the starry river. On the realm ship hung a war flag that flowed with resplendent Tao light, the words Universe Tao Court written on it. On the realm ship, a group of men and women gazed into the distance, the men handsome and women beautiful, all of them like exiled immortals. This is Universe Tao Court's Universe Essence Sword Ship. Someone sucked in a cold breath of air. Universe Tao Court, that was one of the 6 great orthodoxies that shook the starry sky. In the vast starry sky, who didn't know about it? In the eyes of these heavenly geniuses, us outsiders are indeed no different from country bumpkins. Someone said in self-mockery, his voice filled with envy, yearning, as well as a sense of inferiority. Even the quasi-emperor level figures sighed inwardly. Even though they knew they were being mocked, they couldn't feel any anger. It was because the other party was Universe Tao Court, a colossus that was powerful enough to make others revere and feel restraining fear. After witnessing this scene and seeing the reactions of the people on the ship, Lin soon deeply realized how terrifying the influence of one of the 6 great Tao courts, Universe Tao Court, was. They didn't even dare to get angry after being mocked. Bro, that's the successor of the Heaven and Earth Tao Court. You don't seem to be afraid. On the wall of the courtyard in the distance, the lad in linen said with a smile. He noticed that Lin Sun's expression was calm, which was different from others. Lin Sun glanced at this guy and said nothing. Back then in the Kunlun ruins, Yen Chunjun, the black-robed sword Saint Guzongxin, and the others from the Universe Tao Court had all died in his hands. The young man suddenly said, "Brother, we're about to arrive at the prehistoric world. That place is unimaginably huge. Do you have a place you want to go?" Lin Sun nodded. "Why don't we move together?" The eyes of the youth in linen clothes lit up. "I'm here purely to travel the world. We can travel together. Since you've accepted the golden sky mystic moon, you can consider accepting a little brother like me." His voice was filled with anticipation. But before Lin Sun could say anything, the lad in linen was picked up by the old woman with one hand and brought into the courtyard. No matter how loudly he shouted, it was useless. Lin Sun smiled. If the young man followed by his side, it would simply be like following a devil incarnate that would cause trouble at any moment, and it would be best to keep a respectful distance from him. When the Tao sparring competition organized by the 6 major Tao courts begins, you must come, brother. I'm looking forward to meeting you again. The shouts of the young man sounded out from afar. The Tao discussion? Lin Sun had heard of it, but he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. He didn't intend to get involved at all. After all, if one counted with one's fingers, then the 3 great powers of the 6 grand Tao courts, the Chaos, Universe, and Martial Tao, had taken him to be a thorn in their side, and they'd started issuing a bounty for him 6 years ago. If he were to appear in such a Tao discussion, then once his identity was exposed, the consequences would definitely be unimaginable. The golden sky mystic moon had been standing silently by Lin Sun's side. She was graceful and picturesque. "Ancestor!" Suddenly, she exclaimed with surprise. Sword Emperor Windraiser, who wore a linen robe and had a thin appearance, had suddenly appeared here. "Little girl, we're about to arrive at the prehistoric world. I'm going back as well. Take good care of yourself in the future," Sword Emperor Windraiser warned. The golden sky mystic moon nodded with a trace of reluctance in her eyes. "Go ahead. I'll have a chat with my little friend Yuxuan," Sword Emperor Windraiser said as he looked at Lin Sun. Seeing this, the golden sky mystic moon stepped back for the time being. "My little friend, no matter what mistakes Xianwei makes in the future, you can punish her. You don't have to care about the attitude of the Jintian clan." Sword Monarch Fufeng looked at the distant Hongmeng world and took a deep breath. "In short, this lass will be your Tao servant from now on. Whether she lives or dies will have nothing to do with the Jintian clan." Lin Sun nodded. "As long as she listens to me, I won't regard her as an outsider." Sword Emperor Windraiser said with a smile. I'm relieved to hear your words. He pointed at the distant prehistoric world and said, My little friend, do you know how the emperors view this world? Lin Sun was instantly curious. Sword Emperor Windraiser's eyes were filled with emotion. In short, they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It's too big, so big that even emperors often feel small. Since the beginning of time, no one knows where its boundaries are. Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. An emperor could suppress the power of a small world with just a wave of his hand, but in front of the prehistoric world, he felt small. Do you know that what people know about the prehistoric world is only the tip of the iceberg? There are still many unknown places in this world. Sword Emperor Windraiser said, Some of those unknown places are too dangerous, like forbidden zones, and some are like desolate places. Once you enter, you won't be able to return. Even the 6 Dao courts and the 10 war clans have been searching for countless years, but they still can't see the whole picture of those unknown places. In the end, it's because the prehistoric world is too big. Even emperors don't dare to step into some of the unknown places. Unknown places. Lin Sun firmly remembered this title. For people, joining a Taoist sect is like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate and soaring into the sky. Sword Emperor Windraiser had a deep look in his eyes. However, to colossi like the 6 great Dao courts and the 10 great combat clans, whoever can explore and conquer more unknown lands will gain an advantage in the struggle for orthodoxy. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Why is that? That's because the unknown lands are filled with unimaginable unknowns and countless dangers. However, at the same time, there are also innumerable opportunities and fortunes. When Sword Emperor Windraiser spoke up to this point, he gave an example that everyone took delight in talking about. In ancient times, the green light divine mountain where the black-yellow Taoist court was located was originally an unknown place. It was primitive and ancient, and had never been discovered by people. The founder of the black-yellow Taoist court went through hardships and trekked here, and found a Taoist tablet that was born in the origin of chaos. He comprehended the Tao in one go, and thus created the black-yellow Taoist court, an ancient orthodoxy that shocked the heavens. This Taoist tablet, also known as the black-yellow Taoist tablet, was the most precious treasure of the black-yellow Taoist court. From then on, the green light divine mountain was regarded as a place of the Taoist court and was well known by the world. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. A Taoist tablet created a Taoist court, and the green light divine mountain, which originally belonged to the unknown place, also became famous all over the world. Did this mean that in the unknown place, there were also other opportunities that were not inferior to the black-yellow Taoist tablet? Sure enough, the next moment, Sword Emperor Windraiser said, For countless years, except for the black-yellow Taoist court, almost all the other great forces have obtained unexpected benefits from the unknown place. Some of them unearthed rare heavenly paradises that shocked the world. Some have discovered some unknown and mysterious spiritual objects and mineral deposits, which further expanded their forces and territories. Some, according to what Sword Emperor Windraiser said, the unknown places were like numerous unknown worlds, and there were numerous unexpected fortuitous encounters and fortune within them. There were heavenly abodes that could shock the world, natural spirit treasures, mineral resources, divine treasures, and precious medicines. From primitive times to ancient times, and from ancient times to the present world, countless forces and cultivators had gone to the unknown place to explore crazily in the past countless years. But most of them had suffered heavy losses. Only a few great powers and extremely formidable cultivators were able to obtain fortune that caused others to drool from the unknown lands. The reason for that was because unknown places were filled with countless unknown dangers. Although the unknown place had been explored by many forces over the years, and some places had been reclaimed and turned into treasures for cultivators to live and cultivate, But up to now there were still too many unknown places that had not been explored. Even the emperors didn't know how vast the unknown place was. Knowing this, there was only one thought left in Lin Sun's mind. The Hongmeng world was really too big. It was no wonder that the emperors would feel tiny and sigh with the feeling of not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. My friend, the strength of the 6 great Tao courts and the 10 great war clans is naturally beyond doubt. They represent the top forces on the ancient path of the starry sky. But when you arrive at the Hongmeng world, don't underestimate some other forces and orthodoxies. Sword Emperor Windraiser reminded, for example, the Nanhua Temple, the Blessed Land of Dayan, and some other primeval emperor clans have extremely formidable resources. Lin Sun nodded. On this day, after chatting with Lin Sun for a long time, Sword Emperor Windraiser left swiftly. The Hongmeng world seemed to be right in front of them, but the boat traveled through the void for half a month before finally arriving. Looking at it from a close distance, one could only see an expanse of chaos and countless stars that flowed with the aura of chaos. Hongmeng was the state when the chaos was first formed, and its vastness was unknown. Chapter 1938. After the boat sailed into the primordial world that was suffused with chaotic qi, it traveled for another 2 days before finally descending slowly. Lin and City. There was a fairy city in the Hongmeng world. It was prosperous and densely populated. Every day, many border ships from all over the world landed outside the city, and countless border ships set sail from the city and sailed into the starry sky. There were countless fairy cities like this in the Hongmeng world. They were extremely common. With a roar, the boat landed on the ground. At this moment, Lin Sun immediately felt a heavy power of the law of heaven and earth coming to his face, exuding a vast and primitive aura, which made him tremble all over. It was as if he had suddenly come to the blessed land from a dry desert. What he breathed in his mouth and nose were wisps of pure chaotic qi. On the other hand, his mind seemed as if it had been nourished by the aura of the Grand Tao, and he had the feeling of being refreshed and at ease. Lin Sun was moved. What a marvelous world! With his current cultivation of the Saint King realm, he instantly judged that if he cultivated here, it would be comparable to cultivating in a first-class blessed land in the ancient Desolation territory. It should be known that this was just outside a city in the Hongmeng world. It was not a blessed land at all. No wonder the practitioners on this starry ancient road regard the Hongmeng world as a holy land of cultivation. This place is really extraordinary. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He had been to many places since he started his cultivation, but there was almost no place that could compare with the Hongmeng world. Here, the law of heaven and earth exuded a primitive aura, which was the most suitable place for Tao and cultivation. The passengers on the support boat charged down like tidewater. Most of the cultivators revealed excited, expectant, and curious expressions. It was also the first time for them to come to the Hongmeng world. After traveling across the starry sky for half a year, they finally arrived at this magical and fertile land for cultivation. One could imagine how excited they were. Senior Yu Xian, Master and I plan to go to the Great Sound Pure Land immediately. Lu Qingyan's voice was gentle and pleasant. She came to say goodbye to Lin Sun. Lin Sun nodded and said with a smile, "Go ahead. We will definitely have a chance to meet again in the future." When he was on the boat, he had given this Xian token to Lu Qingyan. If nothing unexpected happened, Lu Qingyan would definitely be able to enter the Great Sound Pure Land to cultivate. Senior Yu Xian, can I ask you something? Lu Qingyan took a deep breath and stared at Lin Sun with her clear eyes. Lin Sun smiled bitterly in his heart. He knew what Lu Qingyan was going to ask without guessing. He lowered his head and looked at the peerless beauty in front of him who seemed to have walked out of a painting. Then, he seriously said, "Miss Qingyan, when we meet next time, no matter what you ask, I promise to tell you truthfully." Lu Qingyan was stunned, and a trace of bitterness appeared in her eyes. She sighed softly. Okay, then. I will see you again? She was born beautiful, pure and graceful like an orchid. When she spoke at this moment, there was a trace of disappointment on her face. Her delicate and pitiful appearance made Lin Sun have the impulse to tell her his identity. But in the end, he restrained himself and nodded with a smile. See you again. Lu Qingyan nodded and walked down from the boat with her master, Zhuang Yunji. Watching her go away, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing in his heart. He didn't know when he would see her again. What Lin didn't notice was that Lu Qingyan's lips suddenly raised into a sly smile when they left the boat. Brother Lin, from the first time you picked up the ancient rhythm ocarina, I had already guessed your identity, she murmured in her heart. 6 years ago, a huge piece of news spread out from the Kunlun ruins. A man named Lin Sun's name shook the starry sky ancient path because of this, causing a sensation in the world. Since then, Lin Sun had become a wanted target of many great forces. Countless people in the world regarded him as prey and coveted the fortune he possessed. Of course, Lu Qingyan was also clear about this. Therefore, she also understood why Lin Sun hid his identity and didn't want to recognize her. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't have protected me like you did. Thinking of this, she couldn't help turning her head. In the distance, she could still see the tall figure standing and looking at her. She couldn't help waving her hand, and a bright smile appeared on her beautiful face. She said in her heart, "Thank you for protecting me all the way, child Lin. Let's go too," Lin Sun said and walked out of the boat. Beside him, Jin Tian Xianyue, who was dressed as white as snow and had a graceful bearing, followed suit. Watching them leave, all the big shots of the Heavenly Sound Pavilion, including Liang Chuan, felt a sense of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Finally, he was able to send this lord away. Thinking of what had happened on the boat in the past 6 months, Liang Chuan and the others felt complicated. When I go back, I will practice in seclusion. I will never step into the world again until I become an emperor. Liang Chuan took a deep breath and made a decision. Along the way, his state of mind was tortured and tormented, but at the same time, it allowed him to see through some of the original shackles and barriers in his state of mind. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. In the primordial world, putting aside the unknown lands, the territory that cultivators lived in was divided into 49 prefectures. It was named after the saying, "The great Tao is 50, and the heavens are 49. Every single province contained countless cities, mountains, and rivers. They were extremely vast and boundless. The smallest prefecture, Jadeite Prefecture, was comparable to the complete territory of the ancient Desolation region. As for the largest, Central Earth Tao province, its territory was 1,000 times larger than the exquisite Dragon province. Moreover, as the unknown lands in the vicinity of the Middle Earth Tao province were opened up, compared to the ancient times, the territory of the Middle Earth Tao province had expanded by several times. It was worth mentioning that the Middle Earth Prefecture was the heart of the primordial world, and the forces of the 6 great Tao courts resided there. The Middle Earth Prefecture was also seen as the gathering place of the emperors, the place where the Tao ancestors lived in seclusion. This meant that the Middle Earth Prefecture was undoubtedly the place with the highest number of emperors on the ancient path in the starry sky. Lin and City. The Azure Prefecture was situated amongst the 49 prefectures of the primordial world. It was one of the 10,000-plus cities in the Azure Prefecture, and it couldn't be considered to be famous. However, to Lin Sun, who'd arrived at the primordial world for the first time, Lin and City could already be considered to be an enormous city. Its city walls were 3 kilometers tall and rose and fell continuously, and he couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. It was lofty and grand. It was noon, and the sky was bright and beautiful. Numerous figures of cultivators flowed endlessly before the city gate. Some rode spirit beasts and cranes, some rode swords and glowed with the light of treasures, some sat upright on meditation cushions, and some rode auspicious clouds. Men, women, old and young. There were all sorts of people here, and there were even numerous beings of other races of various shapes and sizes. It caused Lin Sun's horizons to be unable to help but widen. However, most of these cultivators were like Lin Sun, and they'd come from other places in the starry sky. So they could only be considered as outsiders. Lin Sun's first impression was that it was clamorous and bustling. All you outsiders, listen up. Those below the Saint Realm have to pay 300 Dao crystals to enter the city, and those above the Saint Realm only have to pay 10 Dao crystals. A loud shout that sounded like a thunderclap resounded from afar before the city gate. A group of cultivators in armor with powerful auras were stationed in front of the city gate, maintaining the order of entering and exiting the city. They were just some guards of the city gate, and the most powerful ones among them were in the true sage realm. Hurry up and pay the Dao crystals. These are the experts of the Xing clan, the largest force in Lin An City. Their patriarch, Xing Lushui, is an elder of the Purple Cloud Sword sect, which ranks third in Green Province. He has great power and is regarded as a big shot in Green Province. Someone in the crowd whispered and explained to Lin Sun and the other outsiders. The territory of Green Province was even vaster than that of a big world. Any force that could rank in the top 3 would already be regarded as an overlord in other world. For example, the Heavenly Sound School was regarded as the first orthodoxy in the Ziheng Star area, but in Green Province, it was at most equal to the Purple Cloud Sword sect, which ranked third. You have to pay the Dao crystals to enter the city. What's the rule? Some people were dissatisfied, not because they couldn't afford the Dao crystals, but because they felt despised. The rules of the Xing clan are the rules of Lin An City. In the past, there were people who refused to pay the Dao crystals, but they all ended up very badly. An elder explained patiently. Seeing such a scene from a distance, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel surprised. How dare they ask the practitioners for the Dao crystals just to enter and exit the city? Weren't they afraid of provoking the people they shouldn't provoke? Child, you may not know that a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. In a fairy city like Lin An City, most of the people who appear every day are outsiders who are not familiar with the primordial world. Under normal circumstances, no one would rashly offend a local snake like the Xing clan. Jintian Xianyue explained in a low voice. Lin Sun suddenly understood and said, "That is to say, this situation only happens in the fairy city?" Jintian Xianyue said, "Yes, after all, the primordial world is too big, with many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are countless strong people. If you are not careful, you may provoke the descendants of some ancient orthodoxies or big clans." Lin Sun nodded. Thinking about it, it made sense. They had just arrived here and did not understand anything. No matter who it was, they would not dare to act recklessly. Lin Sun noticed that some great sages and holy kings in the crowd also obediently paid the Dao crystals when entering the city. In other places, these great sages and holy kings were all powerful beings, but they came to the primordial world for the first time. They could only cooperate obediently. Lin Sun also saw that some young people who were obviously from extraordinary backgrounds more or less had a trace of anger in their eyes, but they finally restrained themselves under the comfort of the elders around them. In other places in the starry sky, they might be dazzling and noble figures, but in the primordial world, they were just outsiders. Just as Lin Sun and Jintian Xianyue followed the crowd and planned to enter the city, a voice caught Lin Sun's attention.